the Pledge of Allegiance, I would ask that you all join me in a moment of silence. Jerry Dibble, the mayor of Sioux Falls, the mayor of Edgemont, just passed away. His wife Trudy worked for us as a police department secretary. And I just ask that we join together in a moment of silence and remember that family in our prayers. Thank you. Let's join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Misty, I'd ask if you call the roll, please.
David Burris.
Here.
Ray Eggefe.
Here.
Bill Lukens.
Here.
Bob Nelson.
Here.
Ron Richards.
Here.
Allison Ritterbusch. Here. Craig Lomi.
Present.
Caitlin Turner.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, we do have a quorum. First item on our agenda is to adopt the agenda. I'd ask for a motion.
I make a motion. Go ahead, Craig.
Make a motion to adopt the agenda for tonight.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt the agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The agenda is adopted. Again, I remind anyone, if there is a conflict of interest in any item that we'll be voting on tonight, please notify the entire council prior to the vote. You have in your packages the minutes from the April 6th council meeting. I'd ask for a motion to approve.
I make a motion to approve the minutes from the April 6th council meeting.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve those minutes. Are there any comments? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. We have in your packages claims for bills in between of $169,544.82. I'd ask for a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve the bills in between for $169,544.82.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve those bills in between. Are there any questions, comments, or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The bills in between are approved. You also have in your packages current claims for $105,647.71. I'd ask for a motion to approve.
Make a motion to approve current claims for $105,647.71.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve current claims. Are there any questions, comments, or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? They are approved. Next item on the agenda is a council update from the library. Dawn?
Thank you for having me. It's nice to see everyone here today and that everyone is healthy. In your agenda packets last Friday, you guys got a packet of a report. Misty pointed out to me that some of the numbers were incorrect, and I apparently did not have the final 2019 numbers. So I believe she handed out to you today a revised version of that. Basically, the numbers that were changed was Section D, income, and Section E, expenditures. Those are the numbers that were changed to reflect the final for 2019 numbers. If you look at the back, well, second to last page, page 11, after I put in all these numbers and hit return and turn it in, then I go to print it out. It prints me out this selected key ratios FY 2019. So the computer generates this report automatically based on what I turned in. I'm real excited to say that once again we're above average for a library in the state of South Dakota. Registered borrowers per capita, the average is 49. We are sitting at 99, so 0.99, so we're like double. Our numbers have come down a little from 2018 in some areas, but in some areas they've gone up. As our library visitors per capita, the state average is 5. In 2018, it was 13.9. We're up to 14. So that means for everyone in our town, and that's what they use as the population of Hot Springs, everyone in our town has basically visited the library 14 times this year. So, and we all know that some of that is out-of-town users. But it does show that we get a lot of people coming through our doors. You can read through these. The circulation of children's materials has gone up. The average in the state is 41%. In 18, it was 45% for us. This year, it was 58%, almost 60% for checking children's stuff out. With the growth of our children's programming, that means they're getting a lot more things to carry home with them. The attendance per capita kind of fluctuates as kids grow out of one group and grow into another, and our teens turn into adults. But we're generally ahead of the state average. The 44% of total program, it's 0.44 for the total program attendance statewide. Ours is 0.86% of our population come to the library. All of our attendance records have gone up from 14 to 15, from 9 to 21, and from 39 to 60 for children's, young adults, and adult program attendance. We try really hard to have something happening every day at the library for at least one age group, and we manage to get that done. Quite often there's two or three things going on at the same time. I don't have any real numbers for you for what's happened in the last few months because, quite frankly, they're all kind of messed up. I will say, since we have locked our doors for safety reasons, our curbside pickup has really been growing. It started out as 1 or 2 people a day. We're up to a dozen to 15 people a day. Either call in, email us, or order it online through our catalog program, put things on hold, or drop off a form they can find on the front door for items that they'd like us to fill that order, brown paper bag it, staple it, put it out in front of the library from 2 to 4 every day to pick up. Our incoming books have obviously dropped quite a bit, but we're keeping up with that really well. We take what comes in, moves it over to a spot over here that is set for 24 to 48 hours, and we take those that were sitting there out into the library, and where we clean them, check them in, and get them ready to put them back on the shelf. So our stuff that's coming in is sitting 24 to 48 hours before we touch it. And we go in and spray it with some Lysol spray too, just for good measure, close the door. So all of us have our own workstations. Everyone has their own desk. So if I need to do something on the computer, I go to my computer, so I'm the only one touching my mouse, and I'm the only one touching my keyboard, and I'm the only one using the stuff at my desk. That way we keep ourselves isolated. We're not sharing equipment like we used to do. It might be kind of weird when we go back to work. Everyone will be running to their own desk instead of using the one computer. We did have kind of a scare the first week or so. One of the staff thought they might have coronavirus and had to be tested, and then one of the staff's father thought he had it, so they had to be tested. So we had a little bit of a flux there as to whether we'd be open or not. But the last few weeks, we've been really steady and taking care of business at the library. We're doing inventory. We're rearranging things. We're putting up new posters. We're putting up new decorating ideas. We're putting up new displays. Our plan is spend about 3 or 4 days before we open, clean that baby up like you've never seen it before, and have a grand opening, so to speak, where when they walk in, they're going to see all new stuff. It's going to be like, yay, the library's open and it's all fresh and new and everything's good to go again. Are there any questions?
Does anyone on the council have any questions?
Ms. Dawn, what's your plan regarding summer rec? I know that we have this.
Yes. We are pursuing summer rec just like we were going to have it, a 4-week program. We're laying out all our schedule, we're laying out all of our activities, we're laying out everything just like it's going to be a 4-week in-house program. The thing that we're thinking is our 4-week program might not be till July.
Okay,
July
perfect.
through August, or in August.
Okay.
But we intend on having a 4-week in-house program. We just don't know which 4 weeks that's going to be.
Yes. Okay, great. That's what I was wondering, if you're still planning on that. Thank
Yes,
you.
we are. We're actively working on that.
Okay, are there any other questions? Go ahead.
I do have a couple. Don, you were talking about page 11 and comparing your numbers to statewide numbers. Looking at the local government operating revenue per capita, is that number arrived at by taking the population used per capita, dividing that into your total expenses, and coming up with that number?
Are you looking at the very first line?
The second one.
The local government operating revenue per capita.
You know, I would say, I know how we got that $75.44, is that we took our operating capital and divided it by how many cards.
Okay.
And that's how we got that $75 number.
Okay, so comparing that to the statewide average, we have more small communities in Hot Springs and South Dakota than we do large. But can you comment, is that amount per user typical for smaller communities?
I don't know, because they probably take per capita of Sioux Falls and per capita of Edgemont, and then take the cards,
Yeah.
and I don't know how that would chart out.
It says it's a single measure of the library's local financial support, so I would say that's not including those larger city numbers, maybe in the statewide average, but not your library.
Right, and I understand as far as our library, as I said, we've got more small communities than we do large communities, so I just wondering if you had any idea whether, because ours is higher than a statewide average, if it's really in line with other communities our size. So, just trying to understand the number and how it relates to other places.
I have a report I can go to at the state library. I can pull it up, and it'll list every library, and it will have all this information for every library. So I can look at the Edgemont library and see. So I could ideally look at another library that was our size and see what the numbers were for it.
If you would, please.
Okay, I'll get that for you.
Okay. And then the second one is on page 9. In your narrative where you're talking about listing into special events, I highlighted, because the old fossil in me really likes this, no electronics. They have designed their own board games, played dominoes, charades, Pictionary, spoons, and Uno. Is that something that you're seeing with the younger generation, that they are kind of putting up the electronics and getting back to the old way of doing games?
We're seeing the family units come in with the brother, couple, 3 kids. They're coming to that game day, and they're getting involved in that family stuff. But yeah, every time we do it, we get another kid or 2 in there.
All right.
So I think they're noticing. Would you like me to read this off? I guess I could read it off for the public. They asked for a narrative of any special events that we did at the library this year. Said we had a busy year at the Hot Springs Public Library. We made homemade kites for one of our monthly maker spaces. We went to the Summers Farmers Market and gave away children's books and did face painting. We attended the Balloon Festival and had the public do chalk painting. Santa and Mrs. Claus visited and gave a new wrapped book to each guest, big or small. The South Dakota Humanities programs included Richard Kahn talking about stagecoach routes and Molly Barari leading the book discussion on Neither Wolf Nor Dog. It was agreed by all that we really would like to see the movie. We hosted the Jumpstart meeting for the area librarians to receive training for summer reading. At our summer reading program, we opened at the local airport. It was their annual open house, with children receiving plane rides, tours of different aircrafts, including a helicopter and a ping pong drop with door prizes. We had the Journey Museum bring down the planetarium for the town to take an outer space adventure. Grades 4 through 6 participated in several 8-week CSI first coding classes. Prizes for these included an Echo and a Kindle. Lego Day was on the first Friday of every month, and that has been a big hit. As a matter of fact, we've had to purchase more Legos to keep up with the crowd. The children are also becoming invested in the game day, no electronics. They have designed their own game boards, played dominoes, charades, Pictionary, spoons, and Uno. The library hosts a spring-fall poetry night. Local poets attend and read either original works or old favorites. Everyone enjoys the relaxing evening with just words. Breakout boxes have become a requested activity with adults and children alike. Dawn took 5 historical programs to the Seven Sisters Nursing Home throughout the year. The topics included influenza 1918, Butler Park, water carnival and races, the Sisters Hospital, and the Mueller family of Cascade. We were fortunate enough to borrow from the Deadwood Historical Society a display about baseball in the Black Hills. We had the exhibit for 3 months. The newspaper did a story for us, and I had much positive input from all who viewed the display. So that's the report that I turned into the State Library this year.
Okay, are there any other questions or comments? Thank you, Don. Appreciate the report. Next we have on the agenda our Shedco update. Andrea?
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. Can you hear me okay?
The closer you are, the better.
Yeah. Eat the mic, as I recall. It's hard to remember that there was actually things happening before I was plastered in front of a computer screen looking at and visiting on webinars about COVID. It seems like that's my whole life now. Yeah. So what we were doing before COVID, we had gotten our pre-app for the Bulldoze Build and Beautify grant for Edgemont approved, and that's a 3-lot chunk of land that we're going to put a house on. There's a pre-app and then the full app, and the full app probably won't be submitted until fall. So I imagine nothing's going to happen there before fall. I facilitated a meeting with Fall River Health Services and Edgemont City Council. They've been expressing a desire for some type of clinic, and the conclusion that we came to that was good for everybody was that a home visit type clinic would work well. And so I was I had a survey developed to put out to all people in Edgemont, what kinds of things they would be willing, what kinds of services they would be willing to have in their own homes. And I froze that after the COVID. It didn't seem like a good time to get accurate information on people. So I'm waiting to launch that. The greenhouse project also ended up being frozen. As soon as COVID was announced, all the state employees were told they couldn't travel, and that included the professors and students that we were working with. So we're waiting for that, for travel to be permitted again, for that to continue. The Tri-State Local Foods Conference that would have been here last weekend was also canceled until fall. They're talking about having it in Sturgis, and that's assuming that everybody will be able to travel by then. I have one business looking at relocating here. That's positive. And I have one business expansion project going. The businesses that ended up burning down. I worked with them to access all their loan options, figure out what their actual physical options were, and to look at other possibilities for locating in the interim, depending on whether they want to rebuild where they were originally, or they're willing to move, or have a different format altogether. I'm also going to put together a survey of the COVID impacts on our local businesses. I'm kind of casting about for how to do that. I'll probably use SurveyMonkey just because I'm familiar with it, but I'm kind of cogitating on what kinds of questions I can ask in that format to get answers that are revealing for us and allow those businesses to remain anonymous. And I think, lastly, I'm working to put together a packet on 501c3 rules and regs for some folks here in town who've just formed a new one, and they're still a little fuzzy on how it needs to all go together and the regulations and responsibilities that go along with the privilege. Are there any questions?
Okay, thank you, Andrea. Any questions from the council?
Yeah.
I knew you did, Bob.
You'd mentioned you're working with the businesses that were displaced by the fire. That's still ongoing, or just had initial conversations with them? I don't understand that.
Well, they're in 3 very different places in terms of what they want to do. So with some of them, I've looked at other locations for them to be permanently, some for other locations for them to be in the interim, some temporary, very temporary locations. It's really not, I can't really talk about it. Yeah. So I'm sorry I can't be more clear than that.
No, I understand the specifics aren't any of my business. But discussions are ongoing, trying to help them through all of that. Okay. So more than just the initial conversation.
Right.
All right, thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Well, thank you, Andrea. I know that it's going to be busy for probably a while, getting back to a new normal after this gets over.
I would like to thank Brett for being so patient with me in writing the articles, because it seems like as soon as I submit, something changes, a number changes, a rule changes, and he's been very tolerant of my, oh gosh, you've got to change this, you've got to change that, it's wrong information. So thank you, Brett.
And you do have information for businesses that may be needing some relief as a result of the crisis that we're in. They can get a hold of you. And
absolutely, and I would say that if folks had an application that they were working on, I would go ahead and complete it anyway, because then it will be in one of the first ones to get considered for the next round. And we're hoping to hear by Friday.
okay, thank you. Next item on our agenda is communications from the public, and we have scheduled Justin O'Neill.
Good evening, council members, mayor. I'm here tonight representing Mr. Pierce.
Can you get a little closer to the microphone so it picks up?
Can you hear me?
Yes,
All right.
thanks.
I'm here tonight representing Mr. Sam Pierce on a petition to the city to have the city grant an easement for the life of some structures and buildings on his property. Mr. Pierce is attempting to sell his property. There was a survey done, and it was discovered that 2 of his garages encroached onto what's called Abrams Way, which is an unimproved road here in Hot Springs. It's unused. It appears to me, I visited the property, it appears to me that it's kind of a gully leading up to a hill. It doesn't appear that it would service any sort of other buildings or residential properties or anything like that. I have provided to you, I think a little late, I think you guys have in your packets the petition. and then a proposed resolution along with a proposed, the actual easement itself for your guys' review for our next meeting when you guys are going to be considering that. So I'm here tonight. If you guys have any questions that you have that you want answered, I might be able to answer those tonight, or I can gather the information before the next meeting.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments from the council? You do have that package, and I appreciate the petition is completed with the resolution. Thank you. Bob, can you look at that with the Public Works to ensure that
Yes.
we're copacetic, and we'll try to get that at the next meeting? Is that soon enough, sufficient?
Yes, I believe they're closing in late May, so the May 4th meeting would be fine.
Okay. And Allison, I don't know if your committee needs to be involved or not.
I think it would be a good idea for that
Yeah.
group to look at it.
Okay. And we'll get those recommendations just to make sure. It seems like every time we do something like this, we discover something that more than just is on the surface. So appreciate your patience, and thank you for the work that you've done and presented to the council.
Absolutely, and thank you for your consideration.
Thanks. Next item on our agenda is the bid opening for the RFP for livestock grazing. And we can look at those. We have two bids on the table. The first one is the South Pasture bid. It looks like
Mayor, would we want to see if there are any other communications from the public?
Pardon?
Would we want to see if there's any
Oh,
other
excuse me.
communications?
Thank you, Misty. I'm jumping ahead. Are there any other communications from the public? I apologize.
Good evening. My name is Steve Winia. I know some of you, not all of you, but I live at 645 and a half South 5th Street. And I'm here to talk about, I know that isn't on the agenda early on, but later on, this proposed sidewalk. And I have a number of concerns that I'd like to share with the council here, and you know, as you move forward and your vote, hopefully take some of them into consideration. You know, per se, I'm not against the sidewalk at all. I'm one of the earlier ones at restoration in Hot Springs and bringing historic sandstone buildings back and so forth. So I've got a lot of time, effort, money invested in the town to move it forward. And also I come not just as a citizen, but I come with a certain amount of expertise in these areas too. And a couple of things that we've talked about is the construction end of it and the safety end of it. I graduated from the engineering school at SDSU, and about half of my graduate program was safety. So I come with a great deal of education in it, but I also come with a number of years of incorporating it. I'm a retired college professor. I've been 26 years in, and I incorporated safety into just about everything that we did. It was an applied engineering program. And within that, also, for the last 16 years, I have taught specific safety courses. I've also developed certifications and written curriculum and so forth to be able to deliver that. So I've got a little knowledge there. And also in the last 16 years, one of our degrees was construction. And it wasn't just how to build a house, it's everything associated with construction. Cost estimating, everything from the infrastructure, the roads, curb gutter, the building itself, foundations, things like that. So I just wanted to make you aware of it. It isn't just as a concerned citizen, but some things that I see here that I think really need to be taken into consideration, and that I've talked to council people, but they don't really seem to be able to give me answers on this. And one of the first ones is this trading of the $2.8 million for University Street. And the state then would hand it over to the city, is my understanding of this. And within that, I see nothing about projected cost of this takeover. And we all know it's in pretty good shape right now. You know, it's with the exception of some issues right where it's starting to slough a little bit, where you start down over the hill towards the bridges. It's had a major slough already, which was repaired the previous time. But like everything else, they wear out. You know, right now it's good, but what's it going to look like in 10, 15, 20 years? And without any numbers on that, in your trade, you don't know how much you're going to be spending on this thing down the road. You know, it may be nothing, but I can tell you, from a cost estimating standpoint of view, to redo, I think it's like 12 blocks of 4-lane highway is a lot of money. And I know money is kind of a short supply with all budgets. I guess my question is are we kicking the cost of this sidewalk down the road to a future council and ultimately to the citizens of Hot Springs? Because sooner or later, somebody's going to have to pay for these things, whether you do it now or whether you do it down the road. Put the glasses on here so I can see here. The other thing that I noticed, and I watched the mayor's video the other night there, and cost overruns for this are paid for by the city. Well, after 26 years in the government, I've seen very few projects that came in at or below budget. There's always cost overruns. And sometimes it can be significant cost overruns also. And these are going to have to be paid for by the city and the citizens of the town. Another concern that I have is if we take over this and it no longer is a state highway 18, which takes you down to the street light and then it joins up with 385. At some point, the bypass is going to be Highway 18. And if you're coming in from the west, all of your mapping, GPSs and stuff are going to route you right around Hot Springs. Because you're on Highway 18, Highway 18 takes a right and goes around Hot Springs. Now, if you look at it and look at the maps of it, it takes you down to the street light, and maybe those people might stop and eat, might stop and get gas, might even look around the town. You know, what's the cost of losing that percentage of people that may come through the downtown? The next thing is I call it the infrastructure of this. And I know that the vote tonight has nothing to do with the bottom of this thing. It's the sidewalk itself and the trade for university. But no matter how you look at it, you really can't separate out the visions or whatever you have for the bottom down at the riverbed. And right now, all you're going to look at is a bunch of cattails. And rubbish that gets thrown over there because that kind of tends to be a dumping point down through there. So you're going to have that to deal with as far as, are you going to let that be what the tourists see when they come to town? You know, just another riverbed down there? I mean, if they want to see that, they can come up and go across from my building and there's 2 full blocks they can look over and see the river. You know, I think if there to be anything aesthetic, it's going to need to have a bunch of work done there. And that's not in that. That's going to have to come out of the city also. The other thing is once it's done, there's going to be quite a little maintenance on this bottom part we're talking about now, a lot of maintenance. You won't be able to just run the old Toro mower in our mower. That's going to be fairly labor intensive. Plus, as everybody knows, our river does rise from time to time with a lot of water. And when that happens, it carries a lot of debris down You know, I don't live too far from the dip bridge down there, and every time there's a heavy rain, I see the city trucks down there. They're pulling all the debris out of the river. It all washes down. There's garbage, there's tree limbs, there's everything else that floats down through there. And I question that because I know maintenance budgets are pretty tight. I was on the Evans Plunge Board for quite a few years, and they couldn't come up with money to replace a couple hot tubs. They got paint peeling off the ceiling in the swimming pool area, and they had no money to do that. How are you going to fund all of this stuff? And I think that's a real question that, you know, before you vote to move forward with is how are you going to pay for all this stuff? The next thing is a safety issue. Now, this highway is being designed by DOT standards for urban lane widths, and that is 11 feet. And that's what you're getting. That's what the standard is throughout South Dakota, and that is what they're making this road to be. Now, granted, you're losing a little bit of sidewalk, but there's still pretty good sidewalk out there. You know, 8 to 9 feet is a pretty good sidewalk, and there's plenty of room to get around people. There's plenty of room for, I know it was brought up, you know, what if you meet somebody in a wheelchair there? You know, go to Hill City and look at their little narrow sidewalks. They manage. They all get up and down there. They don't have to, oh, geez, we got somebody coming down there, so we got to get on the sidewalk. Now, as being a safety professional, your hazard isn't that road. Your hazard is the post office. And I don't know how many of you get your mail at the post office, but that's a game of roulette backing out of there, especially now that we've got all of these tandem trucks coming through. You get the tandem trucks in the summertime, because that's when they're hauling all the gravel. You get the motorhomes coming through, the campers coming through, and it is difficult to get in and out of that post office. If you're looking at an area in your town that dwarfs a 11-foot lane versus a 12-foot lane, that's it. I'm trying to speed this up because I know we don't have much time here. The other thing is, it's just a bad time to be doing this. We got most of our businesses in town closed down right now, or running the shoestring budgets. We got a lot of people that aren't getting payroll coming in, no wages coming in. You know, and I'm one of them. I've got 4 businesses that rent from me. 2 of them are shut down. One's bare bones, and the other one runs an eBay business, so it really hasn't affected them too much. But at some point, they're either going to have to, if this thing don't put up pretty soon, they're going to end up shutting down. And the plunge is shut down, the Mount shut down. You know, we got all this stuff shut down. Well, what does that mean? That's sales tax revenue. You're getting nothing coming in. We're pushing 2 months now, and that's 1/6 of your sales tax for the year is kind of up there. And some way or another, that's going to have to be made up. And is this the time we want to start into dipping ourselves $2.8 million into the hole here and not think about down the road? And the last thing is, this is a little more pointed, it's the absence of public input and transparency. Now, apparently there's been some meetings, but I don't know where they're being advertised. I've never heard about them. I usually hear about them after the fact. The video the other night that the mayor done, I found out about it the next day from a councilman that had just heard about it. You know, there should be, when you're spending $2.8 million of the public's money, we should have some public forums. You know, you got a great auditorium here, you got a great place to be able to hold it. I think you should look at including the public and letting them know, because they're ultimately the ones on the lines here. They're the ones that are going to have to pay the price for this. So anyway, that's what I got, and I thank you for your time. And I know they're tough decisions, and you know, I know we gotta move Hot Springs forward too, but I think especially at these times, we need to move it forward very cautiously and make sure that we don't overextend ourselves too. So, thank you.
Well, thank you, Steve. Just to answer a couple of your questions and comments, I guess for somebody that didn't sound like you were against the sidewalk, it was pretty much taken that you were. But the expertise, I appreciate the input, and we've taken a lot into consideration, looking at the life cycle costs of taking over university. That's why we abandoned the bridges, because we knew that would be a cost. There's a $60,000 program that's going to repair the lower part of university this summer. That's already programmed, already scheduled. John, and I don't know if you've had an opportunity to dig that life cycle costs that we had for the upper part of the university.
I've got the numbers. I'd say bring them with me to this. Told you this morning that these are next meeting before I can present all those numbers. We have to subtract everything in the bridge related that all of what came up with the bridge.
But I'm also educated. I've got a master's degree in civil engineering, and looking at the urban traffic loads, Tracy walked every square ounce of the upper part of university. We feel that the pavement up there is in good shape with the urban traffic loads, that it shouldn't have to be replaced at least for another 20, 30, 35 years.
That's kind of a best guess. I mean, you don't know on that stuff. It does wear out, and it does deteriorate over time.
Well, I'm not going to argue with you. I'm just saying what our opinion is.
And I understand what you're saying about the bridges and everything, but also we're taking this for a lifetime now. We're not, 20, 30 years. Let's say it goes out 20 years, and we have to repay it.
Okay. I'm not going to argue with you. I understand what you're saying, and we understand that too. And that's why we looked at it from a life cycle cost standpoint. Next, you said the cost overruns paid by the city. We do have some contingencies built in. One of the things that we did go out after is a grant also for the utilities. That saved us over $500,000. If really things got very desperate and so forth, some of that money that could eventually be transferred to cover. But we hope that doesn't happen. There's contingencies. We can cut one of the bridges out. We can cut the length of the sidewalk down somewhat. But we feel that we can maintain the construction within budget. The bypass concerns, that's something that every community that has a bypass is concerned about. And we feel that our advertising that talks about the things in Hot Springs, like the Mammoth site, which is located on the bypass, Evans Plunge, and so forth, that we're not going to lose a lot of people. And one of the things that we'll do is keep those trucks that get their GPSs focused on Highway 18 that actually do come down University Avenue. We'll keep them off of that. You looked at the cattails and so forth on the river. We do have a plan to get that cleaned up. It'll be done with erosion blankets, plantings of grass, and opportunities for pedestrian access. Actually, for the Corps of Engineers vernacular, there'll be maintenance trails so we can get down and maintain the floodplain. And so, yeah, we don't like people having to look at those cattails. So there's a plan to do that. We've made contacts with one of the contacts with the National Parks. You have grants available. In fact, the acting Wind Cave superintendent is been meeting with us and discussing the opportunities to perhaps look at getting some kind of grant to help clean that up. And we do have maintenance, a maintenance budget for that floodplain, and part of that money can be used to assist in that. The DOT urban lane width at 11 feet. Our current lanes are 12 feet in width, and I still think it's a safety hazard. Looking out my window, watching those big trucks come up, it's very seldom one of those trucks can make it all the way up River Street, staying on their side of the yellow line. And so we feel that taking away a foot is another hazard. You mentioned Hill City's sidewalk and them getting by with it. You know what they're doing right now?
They're rebuilding it.
They're rebuilding it because when they did the street, DOT did the urban street in Hill City, they goofed it up. Have you ever been to Lee and seen the railing in Lee? We don't want to live with stuff like that, and we have an opportunity to have an input. And the state of South Dakota, DOT is providing that money. It's not coming out of our budget, that $2.8 million to give us an opportunity to do that. We are in tough times, and I don't know, we hope and pray that this thing gets over quickly, that there's, that you and other businessmen in our community have access to the aid that's coming out. But we've got to, this is something that's scheduled by the Department of Transportation that we don't have an opportunity to have much of an input in. And hopefully we can recover with the help. But we also have to look long term, that we need something that would assist and help our people, our businesses that do exist in our downtown area, to have people have a reason to stop. And if we can develop Centennial Park, clean up that river, and have a nice walkway, veterans walkway, we feel that that would help bring some people
So do you
down.
have any data to back that up? I mean, I hear we feel.
Well, I look at a similar thing. In fact, I just talked to an individual from Greenville, South Carolina today. They had a very similar situation 25 years ago. And they've got a reedy river. They built a suspension bridge over the Reedy River, and it was the key to revitalizing their downtown. If you look at TripAdvisor for Greenville, South Carolina, you'll see the #1 place to go is to the Reedy River Suspension Bridge. People can get down to the river, they can picnic, they can walk over the bridge, and it's revitalized their downtown. I look at Rapid City with their downtown area, Deadwood with the Outlaw Square. The state provided them $2 million, but Deadwood had to come up with $2 million of their own. And so all we have to come up with is giving up the upper part of University. And I just wanted to make sure that, you had asked for answers, and I'm just trying to give those to you.
Well, that's that part I pretty much already had understood, but it's still going to cost money to get down in that bottom and do things, and they're not really giving you $2.8 million. You're taking over a big liability for that $2.8 million. So to say that's a giving you, that's not really the case.
Okay, and that's semantics, and I understand.
But as a concerned citizen, you all are stewards of our money here, and do you pass it along to the next council? And we've had plenty of projects before, and then they get passed along, and then the council says, well, that was the previous council did that. I respectfully ask you to really think about this. buildings. Think about the long-term consequences of it.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other communications from the public?
Don Ackerman, I'm the chairman of the Veterans Committee, and I'm on Save the VA Committee. And the reason I'm speaking to the council now is I heard that you were considering not accepting the governor's offer on the road, and I'm concerned. The reason I'm concerned is pretty great, in that, number one, if DOT is going to keep 385 in Hot Springs, they're going to put a road through because it's their road, it's not yours. And I went to a number of meetings where we seen they were going to do this, they were going to have us parking backwards. You think you have a problem pulling out frontward, try parking backwards in the city. I've seen all kinds of programs that they put forward. The mayor came to me because DOT had quit speaking and returning his phone calls and asked me if I could help him get through to the governor. And in conjunction with Save the VA, we arranged a meeting at a very critical time when Save the VA truly needed all the governor's face time we could get. And we arranged to have a meeting. And in that meeting, your mayor did a great job of orchestrating some money from the state of South Dakota that they had no intention of giving, and giving away a number of high-cost issues that are in the city that were going to cost you. My concern is, if we tell this governor who has shined a nice face on Hot Springs and has a good place in her heart for Hot Springs, after she went to all the trouble she's went to give you this money to put in a bridge that's going to enhance your city and make it safer, where are you going to be when you've lost her? You asked for her assistance, she gave it to you. So my concern is it would be simply easy, if the governor came to me and asked me if you decide to turn down this bridge, because we've held them off year after year after year on redoing our city. If she came to me and asked me what I think she should do, then I would tell her to rebuild 7-Eleven and take 385 out of Hot Springs. Then you won't have a problem. She has came forward and said she will help us get to where we need to be. This will do that. You said you would like to have this bridge to enhance our city and improve the safety. The cost, yes, I understand, but you're not rebuilding the 3 bridges, and I think it was 2 bridges we were going to be responsible for and the road. And all we ended up with out of that is a top part of university. So I'm coming to the council to tell you that you've got a good deal on the table, and if the people of Hot Springs truly understood what they were getting, you're not paying $2.8 million for this. She's giving you $2.8 million to do that. And I understand what you're saying, but the reality is you're going to fix your roads anyway down the road. We need to do this. It's important. And just think about what you're doing here. Think about what we're doing. And people that are not informed should not influence you into doing something that's not good for this city. With that, I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Ackerman. Are there any other communications?
I'd like to respond to Don. When you said that the council is considering not accepting the offer from the state, I can only speak for myself. And I'll address more points when we're actually discussing this. But I believe that the suspended sidewalk is a better option than the state's. So you know me, I have not pre-decided anything. I have not made a pre-decision on it. And I'll share with you my concerns and whoever's here. But if someone is representing to you that I have made up my mind about this, that's inaccurate. I just need that out there.
Okay, thank you. And Tim, I believe you had.
Can I have something else? My name is Tim Tice. I'm at 306 North 3rd Street, Hot Springs. I guess I gotta say, when I look at the bridge, it really looks cool. It's neat. I think it would be a good thing. I just need a little bit more information. That's my problem. There's not been enough information put out about it. One thing is, was there a study done on University? Is there a study out there?
What do you mean by a study done on University?
There was a study done on the walk bridge to put that in. Was there a study done on University to see how good a shape that it's in?
Yes.
There's an actual study, paper study?
Yes, our city engineer, who's a professional engineer, did an assessment. We assessed we have our city administrator, who is also a civil engineer, has extensive experience in construction and pavements, did a look at the upper part of University and the bridges. And we looked at the bridges and saw some issues with the bridges that we knew were not copacetic. For one thing, the railings are beginning to rust. They're lead paint. That's an expensive proposition, whether you replace them or whether you paint them, because of the environmental concerns. That was brought forward. There's some failing in the sidewalls on the soil box-filled approaches to those bridges, and that's an expensive proposition to get that filled. And we knew that the cost estimate for doing that probably ranged somewhere between $30 and $40 million. We didn't want to have to pay that in 20 years or however long that they added. So yes, we did do a good look by professional people that have an understanding of pavement condition and road construction, and they did do a look and give us a professional opinion.
So there is a study out there that we can look at and see?
It is from our city staff, yes.
So there is one?
Everything's good. Tracy?
So you can come to City Hall and take a look at it?
Yeah, whatever.
So we can't get that then? All right. You said that there's a $60,000 repair project on University on the pavement. What's to stop this from happening again? And could it happen in another place along the line there that we're going to have to take care of? That's one of my biggest worries, you know, is down the road, like Steve says, 10, 20, or 30 years down the road, we're putting it on somebody else if it does go bad. So,
we have
that's why I wanted to see the study.
We have that problem in every street in Hot Springs. In fact, we had a sinkhole develop in one of our streets up close in your neighborhood, and so that's something that the city faces all the time, and why we do have a maintenance budget to have those areas repaired.
Well, like somebody said, the streets all over town need repair, you know, we need another one, that's the thing. That's why I wanted to see the study. Why, in your video, you said it's a possibility that those stanchions for the walk bridge or the walking bridge, whatever you want to call it, that the soil sample, the soil might not be good enough, you might have to go down farther. Why wasn't there sample tests done on that during that study?
Well,
I mean-
that costs a lot of extra money. That will be done by the state of South Dakota because they have to have that data to do the road construction. And if there's additional data that's needed, that will have to be obtained. But
Shouldn't that be done before we're voting on things?
that's typically not done until we've got a design contractor on contract that would do the design. And John, I don't know if you can jump in and add anything to the soil thing. I know you've been working with
You're
the
asking
state.
about a geotechnical study of the existing soils in place. That was done by the DOT as part of their roadway design. That information was also provided to the concept design architectural firm that's looked at this. So they have the preliminary number. The more in-depth, precise geotechnical study will be done when they're under contract. So it will give the actual foundation design elements that will be required to support that sidewalk.
So they did sample testing.
19 borings were done by the state of South Dakota for that roadway design, and I have a copy of that report also if you'd like to see it.
Okay. Anyway, I handed out that deal for the DOT, and they do say that there's no real safety problems on there. The highway width, the standard width of a highway is 11 feet, not 12 feet for an urban area. That's on there. It also says that I don't believe that they put this in if there was a real safety problem. And this is from their safety people.
And we had a certified safety professional look at it and say there was a problem.
So these people actually work on roads like the DOT does?
No, this is a certified safety individual that, in fact, he's sitting right here, a couple of seats down from me.
Okay.
And that's been his business all his life, to look at circumstances and situations, people's behavior. It's more than just the road width. It's an urban area that has a lot of tourists that are wandering around, children, and so that is factored into it. And in fact, when that certified safety report was sent to the DOT, that's when they began to pay attention to the fact that we were serious about wanting that width of lane increased. And there's one other thing that with the current DOT design with the 11-foot lanes, the sidewalk average on the business side of the street shrinks to between 6 and 8 feet. I think it's an average of 7.5 feet. So it is substantial that we lose at least 1.5 to 3 feet on the business side of the street, which really hurts businesses that want to put tables, want to put wares out there and make our downtown interesting and have things for people to do. Likewise, it takes every opportunity for any kind of greenery to be placed.
Hey, here they say 10 feet at the best and down to 8.5 at the tightest area. That's what they say.
They're looking at their plans, and John, again, you've looked at the plans in probably more detail than I have. Can you confirm or deny that?
You've got curb and gutter, it's going to eat up part of that space. You've got light poles going to sit in there. You've got bumper overhang also. So you're 8.5 feet at best. You're still losing 1.5 foot of that with your bumper overhang.
10 feet at best, it says, and 8.5. at the Darrell's.
It's marked on the pavement out there.
Yep, and I also seen a bike lane out there. That bike lane ain't wide enough. It's 4 feet.
There's no bike lane.
That says bike lane on the pavement out there in front of the,
No, there isn't. I don't know where you're looking at, but there certainly isn't. There hasn't been a bike lane since I've been involved in
front of
this.
the theater, it's got a bike lane on there. I don't know if somebody looked at it.
No,
That's curb and
there's
gutter.
no.
Somebody looked at
That's
it.
curb and gutter.
I think that's a curb and gutter, Tim, where the actual.
Look again, but
there's
I swear it said bike lane on it unless somebody wrote it on there. It could be.
Okay. No.
Let's see. I believe that, I think that the public should know a little bit more about what's going on. I would like to see some of these studies. You know, like I said, I like it. It looks like a good deal, but I want it, you know, shown to me before I go and want somebody voting. I mean, I'm Ward 1, I've got 2 Ward 1 representatives there. I wouldn't want them to vote on this until I got more information. And I talked to a few people on the council, and they said they want more information. So I really believe that we need to have a little bit more input coming out, telling us what's going on, and obviously there needs to be input here, telling people what's going on. Like I said, I like it, and I'm going to let it stay at that, and you guys can do your vote or whatever, but I think the people of Hot Springs would be well-deserved, the people that have to pay the bills. Okay, I'm not saying on this, but the people that have to pay the bills in town, they need to know.
And what bills?
Any bills, it doesn't matter, any streets, anything. I've been to a number of budget hearings, and I listened to you guys, not necessarily you guys right here, but I've listened to a lot of people, and they talked about that they've got a negative balance, okay? And this negative balance, they got to bring it back into where there's a balance. And it is so tight, from what I'm hearing and what I've seen in the past, that we don't need to mess up.
Well, you're really bringing the point of why we need this. Because budgets are more than just taking and cutting things. They're also improving revenue. And if we can get more people to gather and stay in Hot Springs, we can improve our sales tax revenue. And that's one of the ultimate reasons that we want to do this. And so I thank you for helping us make that point as far as budget goes, because we hope that this can be one of those things that helps in that particular area.
Well, so you agree then that we should know more about what's going on before we do this?
Well, the opportunities have been available. We've had public meetings at the chamber. We've had, we've had the opportunity to hear presentations. We've discussed it in Public Works. Those meetings are open to the public. All of our council meetings where there's been reports that are given have been open to either, if you're not here, to look on the videos and to hear what's going on. So
I do watch them on the videos.
So the opportunities certainly been there for you to garner information. And certainly, if there is an interest, anybody has an opportunity to come and ask.
That's what I'm doing.
Okay.
Tim?
Thank you.
Real quick, I just want to say, I think what you're experiencing is that a lot of this is happening in real time, because we didn't know exactly what the agreement was going to be for a while there when they had it for the bridges, we weren't going to be able to even proceed with it. So it was so much hanging up in the air that now there's a potential agreement that's actually going to work. And so it's kind of happening in real time. And then we have all of our city workers doing that stuff to gather all the information. And hopefully, as you guys hang through this, you'll all the questions that we have for this agreement, you'll hear all of that get figured out as we move to this motion and the discussion part of it. Because there is a lot of questions I know that this whole council has regarding that to make sure that that's really clear. So hang tight and hopefully we'll get a lot of that stuff figured out.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other communications from the public?
Mayor Cotty, there is someone who wants to submit a comment on Zoom, but they're still typing it. I'm not sure this is the first time we've done this way.
Okay.
So I'm not sure whether you want, I believe it's on the same topic. Okay, here it is. You get to the mic.
Go ahead and get to the mic and...
Got to be careful how far I drag that. It's from Karen Meston, and she wanted to have read, there have been a number of public meetings that have been well advertised in different media. We as the public need to pay attention. A lot of work has been done by city staff and many others to get to this point. This decision must be made now. It is too late to ask for third options. We either have the suspended sidewalk or we take the DOT design that was presented very well in the mayor's presentation available on the city website. Again, that was from Karen Meston on Zoom. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other communications? Can you guys get closer to the mic? I'm sorry, these mics just don't pick up and the plastic bags don't help that much either.
We also own the Morris Grand Gallery on River Street. And I wanted to say, as a business owner, right there on that street that is most narrow, I have tourists that come in. I listen to what they say because as I'm trying to build this business, I'm very interested in what they say when they come to town and their comments on the town. And the size of the existing sidewalk is barely big enough for a shopping district, for tourists to move in both directions, for them to feel comfortable, especially given the truck traffic that's on that road. We can't, at this point, make that go away, but we can, the closer you get pushed to it, the less sidewalk there is, the more uncomfortable our guests feel, especially with children or their pets, or people walking dogs. I mean, it is not. Coming up with a plan to narrow that sidewalk will have a significant impact, I believe, and I base this on conversations with the people that I have had in my business. They're not going to like it. They're going to be uncomfortable. They're not going to want to wander up and down the street. If they come to my business specifically, are they going to want to go out on the narrow street with the trucks and the bit and wander down to the next business? And the answer is maybe not. So I'm totally in favor of this sidewalk. It gives another side to the street. Shopping districts have two sides, and we already don't have businesses. This beautiful river, even if it's just cattails, it allows breathing room. It allows a space, a destination on the other side of River Street so that the people who are here feel like there's more to it. You're not just narrowly going down this little sideway going, it's an uncomfortable feeling to narrow that sidewalk and make that narrower. So I want very strongly to say, as a business owner, I think and I believe that it will make total difference to have that sidewalk and that openness to the river and that breathing space and to keep as much sidewalk space in front of my business as you can, so that people don't feel pressed against cars, because that's just not comfortable. 2 cents.
You know, mostly I want to thank the city staff and the council for getting as far as you've gone with the negotiation with the state. The design to begin with, it's a gorgeous design. Granted, it's not 2.8 million of free money, but it's damn close to that. It's 2.8 million of free money minus the net present value of whatever you have to spend on the upper end of University Avenue over time, which is not very much. So it's a ton of free money. It's being directed to a beautiful project that is a pivotal point to this town going forward. And I trust you. And what I hear from some of the people that have spoken is a lack of trust, and that's unfortunate. But I trust you, and I look forward to your vote later this evening. Thank you.
I have a question, ma'am. You do know if this sidewalk don't go in, there is still a sidewalk on that side of the street? The state's gonna put a sidewalk over there. Even if we don't put this suspended sidewalk, there's still gonna be a sidewalk on that side.
But the width of it comes out of the part in front of my business.
It'll be 6 foot on that side.
Right.
Which is not wide enough.
It isn't, if you go...
But there is a sidewalk over there.
We understand that.
I do understand that, and it's a different sidewalk, I believe, because I don't think the wall goes away, the concrete wall, as opposed to the suspended one, which has an openness to the river and an expansive space. And as a gallery owner, a part of where I live is with the aesthetics. I mean, that's kind of the whole thing. And there is an aesthetic balance to how much breathing space there is from the front of a building to where the cars are parked. You don't want to feel like they're rubbing up against the muddy car. I mean, just straight up. And that openness and that feeling of that river. And I've lived in Colorado, and I can quote multiple cities that were absolutely transformed by opening up their rivers. There's Confluence Park in Denver. I'm not going to think about it right now, but it's look it up. It transforms cities to just be open to it, just to see it, because people like it. And we want tourists. They're great. They come in, they give us their money, and then they go home. I mean, they're great. We want them to come and feel welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other communications from the public?
Todd Wilson, 806 Galveston. I can't speak to the engineering.
Can you get closer to the mic?
Yeah.
Thanks.
I don't care. I'm not.
When we're telling the community to be safe, we have to.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I say I'm not here. I can't speak to the engineering. I'm not an engineer. I have confidence in you guys to do what you guys have been elected to do, due diligence. So when it comes to design, I can't speak to that. I can speak to traveling all over the country for work, seeing what a Riverwalk will bring. I've seen it transform Tempe, Arizona, San Antonio. You got Silver Fork in Colorado where they brought it in the river. They've got nice areas. It opens up opportunity to the city that we don't currently have. I want to see the city grow, do well. I do understand there's definitely concerns to every project. However, you have to weigh, put one in hand, one in the other. And with every, risk is reward. So I encourage you to think about it. And, I'm sure you guys will make the right choice, but I'm definitely in favor of it. And I think it would be a positive avenue for the city to take. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Are there any other comments or communications from the public? Okay, go.
My name is Larry, 306 Thompson Avenue. Now, it's my understanding that this bridge goes through the state highway, goes around town. Am I missing anything so far?
It's a federal highway.
It'll be a federal highway around town.
Yeah.
Maybe I can give another different perspective being a transit driver here in town. I can't tell you how many times these big trucks that come through town, you know, doing their thing. We talked about that earlier. Post office being a situation. You know, we got cameras on that bus. We see a lot of stuff that go down, happen, things like that. I've seen where people want to go around. The truck drivers have to go all the way around into this lane, do that, go back where Dale's used to be, down by the post office. You know, at the stoplights, you got these trucks going through the school zone. You know, I'm kind of for this. It makes things a lot safer. People try, and one of my experiences is, I brought this before, is first of all, I have a hard time parking my bus to drop people off at restaurants in town and businesses, so I have to go find a place. Well, last summer, I was pushing a lady in a wheelchair, and I almost got run over with her in a wheelchair. You know, we got tourists coming just barreling through town. We've got truck drivers barreling through the middle of town. I mean, if it's going to make things a little bit safer as a transit driver, seeing a lot of this stuff go down, then I'm for it. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Larry.
Thank you, Larry.
Hey, Larry, you know the semis are still can go through town, don't you?
Yeah, I know they're going to do that much part of it, that part there, but a lot of what I was talking about, you know, the danger part of it also.
Okay.
Thanks, Greg.
Okay, are there any other communications from the public? Okay, hearing none, we will now move on in our agenda to the bid opening. And I appreciate all the comments, and I'm glad people got a chance to voice their opinions. And, I'm sure all of the council was listening, so thank you. We move to the livestock grazing and storing feeding lease award, and we do have from Fall River Feedlot, the airport south pasture, a bid. And I'll go ahead and read this for the council. We at the Fall River Feed Yard would like to propose a lease agreement with the City of Hot Springs for the southern portion of farm ground and pasture that borders Oral Road. There are approximately 200 acres in the area of consideration. We would like to lease this ground for a term of 5 years. The fence on the east boundary of the property is in complete disrepair. Assuming the City of Hot Springs and the Fall River Feedlot can come to an agreement, Fall River Feedlot would rebuild the fence one time at our expense. The next item is weed control and crop grass production on the farm ground. We will disc the farm and the existing weeds up and get the ground ready to plant perennial grass or grasses. We will plant grass one time at our expense. If the weather does not allow the grass to become established and productive, any additional plantings will be paid for by the City of Hot Springs, and the Fall River Feed Yard will furnish the equipment to plant the grass. Fall River Feed Yard will also make good faith effort to control any noxious weeds on the property. The final issue that we need to address is a potential gravel mining enterprise that may start on the land. Obviously, there would be a need to be some additional fencing paid for by the city or the gravel company, and possibly some restitution paid for grass planted if the gravel pit starts up before the term of our lease. During the first year of the lease, Fall River Feed Yard will replace the fence on the east boundary of the property. The Fall River Feed Yard will also farm the farm ground and plant grass in the field. In consideration for these improvements, no rent will be paid for the first year. The next 4 years, the rent shall be $5,000 annually with the lease commencing on June 1, 2020. And this is signed by Bart Crouchon, Assistant Manager, Fall River Feed Yard. That's for the south pasture. We do have another bid here. And this lease is at the agreement of the City of Hot Springs leaser and Gary and Sharon Romey. The leaser agrees to lease 2 parcels of land consisting of approximately 75 acres to leasees for the livestock grazing purposes. These parcels are Parcel 1, land owned by the City of Hot Springs Airport line north of the grass runway and south of Crow's property. Parcel 2 is a property owned by the City of Hot Springs lying between the City Gun Club and Niagara Store Irrigation Unit 108. You'll see the attached map. And the lease will be for a 5-year term commencing on April 1, 2020, which we've passed that date, and concluding on March 31st, 2025. Leasees agree to pay the leaser $12 per acre, totaling $900 each year of the lease, payable April 1 each year. This lease will be renewable at the conclusion of 5 years at the agreement of both parties. And this was dated the 13th of March, 2020, signed both by Gary and Sharon Romey. I would like to go ahead and refer these to the Airport Advisory Committee to just take a look at and make sure that we're copacetic with the lease properties, and before we go ahead and approve those. So I would ask for a motion to table these agreements until the next council meeting.
I make a motion to table the agreements till the next meeting.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to table these lease agreements until they can be studied until the next council meeting. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on in our agenda, we do have committee reports, administrative and finance. Bob and Caitlin?
Mayor Connie, because Bill and I can get long-winded, can we take a 5-minute break?
We will recess for 5 minutes.
Thank you.
And I'd ask in the back row there, please, if you could, maintain the 6-foot spacing. If you're not a family member, make sure that you've got 6-foot spacing apart. It's been pointed out that you've got some issues there. We do want to keep our spacing. Thank you.
All right, Tim.
Sorry, gentlemen, I had a 7-minute cigarette.
Okay, we've got everyone. Let's reconvene and continue on with reports, administrative and finance. Bob and Kate.
The Admin Finance Committee met on April 8th. We did that down here at the Mueller Center. Mayor Kai, Bill, Misty, John, Justin, and myself were present. We used Zoom for the meeting, and the general feeling of everyone is the meeting went well. There's a small learning curve for using Zoom, but it doesn't take long to get comfortable with the process. For this meeting, the public wasn't able to call in, but for our future meetings, Justin will post the information necessary for the public to participate in our meetings on the city's Facebook page. The Admin and Finance Committee will continue to use Zoom for our meetings while the COVID-19 virus is a threat to the public. Some old business items that we talked about. We talked about a request to review the holiday pay policy. Because of the impact to revenue from the coronavirus, discussions about increasing the rate for overtime holiday pay has been tabled. The airport manager has decided to retire August 28th rather than in November. The committee agrees the position should be filled prior to Ed's retirement. This will give Ed an opportunity to familiarize the new manager with operations of the airport prior to him retiring. And the committee recommends the city publish the airport manager position by mid-May with a start date of July 1 and to form a committee to interview the applicants for the position. The police department reduced the number of replacement computers they requested from 7 to 3 to fit within their current budget and to consider adding the remaining 4 computers to their 2021 budget. There are other city departments that will be able to use the 3 computers that are being replaced. There still are a number of resolutions and ordinance updates that will need to be approved by the council. The plan is to have a first and second reading of the resolutions and ordinances in May and June. New business items. Misty talked about the March 2020 revenue numbers. There isn't a significant decrease in revenue in the March numbers, but because those numbers are 30 days behind, revenue dollars going forward are expected to decrease. She also informed the committee that there are 2 CDs maturing on April 26th, 2020. The Cemetery Perpetual Care CD and the Evans Plunge Mineral Springs Debt Service Reserve CD. South Dakota Fit currently has the best rates, 0.4% for 6 months and 0.5% for 12 months. The committee recommends refinancing the Cemetery Perpetual CD and the Evans Plunge Municipal Springs Debt Service Reserve CD with South Dakota Fit at 0.4% for 6 months. The Mueller Center heating system. Staff has found and repaired the leak in the Mueller Center heating system. The leak was in the grid work located in Fall River that's used as a heat exchanger. That part of the heating system will need to be replaced, and John is looking at other options to replace the heat exchanger grid. Because the city needs to reduce spending, the additional hours for recreation that we had talked about previously have been canceled. The city school joint facility use agreement expires May 1st of 2020. And the committee is recommending renewing the city council or the city school joint facility use agreement. For the folks that attended, did I miss anything? The next Admin and Finance meeting is scheduled for May 11th at 1 p.m.
Thank you, Bob.
Again, that will be via Zoom, and the public as well.
Airport Advisory Committee, Bill.
Next Airport Advisory Committee meeting will be Thursday, the 30th of April at 8 a.m. Tentatively, we will be at the airport and also meeting through Zoom.
Okay, thank you. Custer Fall River Regional Waste Management, Ron.
No meeting dates determined at this point.
Downtown Historic Preservation Commission, Craig.
Had no meeting. If we have one, it'll be the first Wednesday of next month. I haven't heard anything.
Evans Plunge Advisory Committee, Allison.
Evans Plunge Advisory Committee will be meeting the second Thursday of May at 12 at the Plunge, and we'll do that with a Zoom call as well.
Okay, thank you. Parks, Recreation, Beautification, and Cultural Development, Dave.
Our next meeting will be the first Wednesday of May, and we'll have that here.
Okay, thank you. Planning and Zoning Commission, Allison.
Planning and Zoning met April 15th. Let's see. myself, Joni, Christine Heidebrink, James Forbord, Steve Preheim, Scott. The mayor was there on Zoom, and Bob was there as well. New business, we had a plat revision, Reynolds Track lots 5 through 18. Discussion to combine all the lots into one larger tract and remove the land from the Cascade Valley Development Subdivision. Fall River County has agreed to change the status of this property to ag status for property tax purposes. There was discussion and a vote to go ahead and move that plat onto the city council. Plat revision number 2, lot line adjustment plat. The owner is wanting to adjust the lots to be more east to west instead of north to south. There was a motion to approve that lot revision and move that on to the council. Revised second Minnetonka plat, per Anderson Engineering's vacate certain alleys in these blocks and create utility easements for future use. While doing this, numerous landowners would like to combine their multiple lots into one lot. This was started in 2018 and tabled for a few different reasons, mainly due to the changes going on with frequent land sales and the creation of the water district that was formed in 2019. There was a recommendation to approve that plat and move it to council as well. City of Hot Springs Armory, there was a potential buyer who is a long-term Hot Springs resident looking for as much information regarding the armory as possible. Bob asked the commission regarding their input for an RFP. The start up to the discussion was suggesting putting it back together, the lots back together how it was, and open it up for bid. But that was just the beginning of the conversation as that was just brought to the commission. Scott brought ordinance amendment 1502 about wood foundations, and there was discussion regarding those, and Scott's going to get more information, and continued discussion will be on that one. 1504 amendments to the residential code. There was discussion regarding section R1052, work exempt from permit, which shall be amended to include or read as follows: structures or work performed on properties of the United States Veterans Administration Hospital or the state's veteran home. There's questions regarding city setbacks, city zoning, and city streets, and discussion regarding city ordinances and how that can direct different things to the state. So that was discussion only. Adoption of the IRC and IBC national building codes. Scott showed a big book regarding some of the changes that are going to be from 2012 to 2018. And there'll be continued discussion, and Scott will come back with recommendations for the commission. Planning and Zoning Commission appeals was discussed, and the process and the steps to present to City Council. There was a couple things that needed to be clarified, but that both Scott and I will work on clarifying and getting that back to them. Let's see. Fall River Ranch RV Resort update. They've started some site work, and looks like work is underway. Mammoth site update. They're waiting for their buildings to be delivered, and the commission determined to move their meeting back to 7 p.m. So next meeting will be Wednesday, May 20th at 7 p.m. Most likely here, and it will be on Zoom as well.
Okay, thank you, Allison.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, go ahead.
On that armory building, if we put those lots together, we won't be building a house on them, because the house would be smaller than the existing structure. Am I right, Scott?
House what?
You couldn't build a house in the front lots if that was all one lot, because the house wouldn't be, it'd be smaller than the existing structure.
Yeah, there is an issue about ratio between the house and an accessory building.
I don't know if we want to put those together.
And that was just the very beginning of the discussion regarding what would be recommended for the RFP, so there'll be more, if that was just brought up to them, that was their first initial thoughts on it, so.
Okay, good. Public safety, Bill.
Public safety met on Wednesday, April 15th at 1 p.m. here at the Mueller Center. In attendance was Mayor Cotty by Zoom, myself, Bob, Caitlin, Captain Wainman, Corporal Schaefer, John, Lori Sherrard, Emergency Manager Frank Maynard was here via Zoom, and we had one member of the public. Under old business, there's no update on any of the FEMA grants for the identified risks from the pre-disaster mitigation plan, mainly because of the COVID-19 crisis. Captain Wainman provided an update on the efforts to improve the mental health commitment process. The process is working well. We are waiting for some response back from Fall River County Sheriff's Office on a couple of inquiries. And there's been no discussion or action taken on a drone ordinance. Under new business, we had a member of the public was present to express his appreciation to the police department. He has had a number of occasions to call them, and each time their response has been rapid and professional. And when they left, in his words, they left a good taste in his mouth. He encouraged them to always wave at the public and continue to build relationship with the public. The committee reviewed a response prepared by the chairman regarding Councilman Romey's allegation at the April 6th, 2020 council meeting. Being in agreement, I provide that response as follows. During the vote on the ordinance 1211, at the April 6th meeting, Councilman Romey made a comment that he didn't think the police were writing tickets on off streets, referring, I believe, to streets in town other than University Avenue and the Highway 18 bypass. Since the comment was made publicly at a council meeting, I believe it's appropriate and necessary to address that comment in the same manner. 1, police department statistics show that in the months of January through March of 2020, the police have issued 25 written warnings and 26 written citations for moving violations on streets other than University Avenue and the Highway 18 bypass. They have made 1 drug arrest as part of one of those violations and 12 DUIs and logged 28 extra patrols. These citations have been written as state violations. A review of police department statistics show that between January 2019 and March 2020, the police have responded to 10,058 calls. Of those, 3,631 were traffic stops and 1,192 were animal calls, leaving the other 5,235 calls to and throughout the community. Since we see that a portion of the monthly traffic stops are in fact on city streets and the officers are actively patrolling, I believe it is a fair and accurate assessment of the data to state that over 51.7% of the calls are associated with community policing, and therefore an even greater percentage of their time is spent in and around our businesses and neighborhoods and not just on University Avenue and the bypass. To further address the question, why did the police spend so much time on the bypass and University writing speeding tickets, I first have some other questions. A, why does the library director buy Harry Potter books instead of what I consider a more appropriate title dealing with a similar subject matter from the author Frank Peretti? B, why does the street department clear my neighborhood of snow when it does, typically after I've cleared my driveway, and then I have to clear the snow again from the street interface? And why did they fill the potholes they did on South 11th Street when they did, and did they compact them correctly? C, why does the golf course crew mow the greens when they do and water when they do, and why do they have some weeds on the sand trap near the 13th green? The overall answer to my question is simple. The City of Hot Springs has department heads in place that are responsible for the execution of the mission of that department, the overall work strategies, and the day-to-day activity and directions of the workers and the individual departments. By the way, I don't expect an answer or a response to any of the questions or comments.
Well, I got
Now to the question
I'm sorry.
of the original, now to the answer of the original question. The police watch the speed on University and the bypass because both are arteries that lead into business and residential areas with accompanying pedestrian crossing and slower vehicular traffic and speed limits of 25 or 35 miles per hour. Experience has shown that both local and non-local drivers tend to ignore those limits. There are also uncontrolled intersections such as the bypass and 71 that have experienced accidents in the past. So bottom line, enforcing the posted speed limit is a way to help protect the public and not just easy pickings for speeders. I believe as members of this council, it's our responsibility to receive questions and concerns from the community and address those with facts. When we don't have the facts at hand, there is a functioning committee system available, as well as communication through the city administrator to the appropriate department head to ask questions for understanding and clarification. Years ago, Stephen Covey wrote an amazing little book titled 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. One of those habits is seek first to understand, then be understood. I've said all this to address the allegation. I've tried to answer that and understand that there is a concern that the police department does not provide a desired level of community policing. Over the past several months, I've shared the monthly police department statistics to try to address that concern indirectly. Tonight, I've attempted to state it more clearly. It was suggested to me that this question of in-town tickets may never go away, and I should include a breakdown of that in my monthly report. At present, that requires additional administrative work that I don't believe is value-adding. I believe the leadership of our police department is doing what we expect of them. They are engaged, they are responsive, and respond to changing conditions, and they are utilizing their limited resources in a manner backed by sound police science. If there are specific concerns, the Public Safety Committee meets the third Wednesday of each month at 1 p.m.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I have comments.
Back to my report. Frank Maynard also provided an update on various FEMA information available. Regarding some other COVID-19 issues, we had one officer that was under quarantine for an on-the-job incident and has since been cleared and is released back to work. The police department is well stocked with hand sanitizer, gloves, and masks, and is now responding to all calls with gloves and masks. They've also switched to uniform t-shirts instead of normal shirts. That way, if they are contaminated, it's much cheaper just to dispose of the shirt than a $13 t-shirt than it is a $35 uniform shirt. Many of the businesses have commented to the officers that they appreciate the checks and hope that they'll continue those face-to-face contacts once the pandemic is over. Another new business item, Corporal Schaefer and Captain Wayman have provided a draft revision to the parking portion of Title 7, Chapter 70. Those revisions were discussed and worked, and John will take those comments and provide a second draft for review at the next meeting. We appreciate the work that was put into that draft, and we found that this review and revision process has worked well. As part of the police department update, Captain Wayman provided the police department update as Chief Close had been working several midnight shifts to cover the officer that was out due to the potential COVID-19 exposure. Chief Close expects to have the quotes for equipment installation on the new Durango by the next public safety meeting. We discussed the online auction of the surplus weapon, and given the current economic climate, the committee felt it would be better to wait until possibly September to initiate that auction. The police department will continue to do the prep work to get that in place in preparation for that auction. Since we have a new vehicle to put in service, we had a short discussion on car markings. Captain Wayman addressed the standard response tactics that are pertinent to car marking discussions. And I shared the results of an informal poll that had been taken that showed 26 of 31 respondents had no concerns with the new, more muted markings. And our meeting adjourned at 3:09 p.m. and our next meeting will be Wednesday, May 20th at 1 p.m. at the Mueller Center.
And Craig, I believe you have a comment.
I was asked to vote on an ordinance amendment on the fine and bond schedule last week. I commented that nobody wrote any tickets on the streets of Hot Springs under the fine and bond schedule of Hot Springs. They write on the state. All the money goes to the state. If you write it on the City of Hot Springs bond, it comes to the city, and most of it comes to the City of Hot Springs. We did this in 2014 because they wanted to write tickets on the streets. And I bet a dime to a dollar you could look in all the books, and the police department never wrote a ticket on the city statute on the side streets. Because they think that it'll get thrown out of court. It costs too much to take it to court. Our lawyer and us talked about that one day, and he says if it's too much, we just drop it. Didn't you? Don't drop it. I don't remember. But, I mean, guys, and I'll vote no again just because of that. I just want you to know that. And you forgot to ask why the dog didn't catch a rabbit in that little thing. You should have wrote that too. That's all I have to say, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, moving on, Public Works. Bob and Ray.
Public Works met on April 14th. Mayor Cotty, Craig, Dave, John, Tracy, Scott, and several private residents joined us. New business item. A resident talked with the committee about their water bill. He feels he's being charged too much for his water bill for January 2020. The water usage for January is significantly higher than the 4 previous months. He provided the water usage numbers for his water bills from December 2018 through February 2020 for the committee to review, and asked the city to reimburse him for his high water bill during January 2020. I said I would look into the resident's concern and personally get back to him, and discussions will continue. Old business items. Allison talked a little bit about it. A private individual spoke with the committee about the airport property. They're interested in the property for a private residence and asked what are the city's plans for the property. This lot has been looked at before for a possible private residence, but nothing resulted from that discussion. The committee believes the city should move forward with working out the details to be able to sell the property so it can be developed for future residential uses. So that discussion will continue. The Main Street bump outs. The committee agreed to a resolution that will be on tonight's agenda to decide if topsoil should be used as the fill material for the bump outs that will be constructed during the Highway 385 road reconstruction project. We also discussed the public area across from Evans Plunge and how to use that property going forward. Currently, there is one mobile food vendor using that space, but the space is large enough to accommodate several more mobile food vendors. John, Craig, Dave, and myself will meet to discuss the steps that will be needed to broaden the use of that space, and we'll be having that meeting tomorrow. Scott expects to be able to have the necessary paperwork completed for the vacating of the alleys in the 26th Street Water District for the April 20 agenda, so that's on our agenda tonight. The brush piles, we've talked about those a lot, and due to the coronavirus, the air burner curtain discussions to manage the brush piles at the landfill has been tabled. The Wesh Oak building, John is hopeful he will receive a second quote for the demolition or stabilization of the Wesh Oak building soon. A number of residents in the Cold Brook area have raised concerns about Evans Street. There are multiple properties with ordinance violations, and the residents want to know what steps the city is taking to correct the problems. Scott has previously used door notifications as a first step for non-compliant properties and has found that that works for some property owners. So he will begin notifying property owners they need to bring their properties into compliance with city ordinances. Last fall, we had talked about putting in a water line, replacing a water line between 3rd and 4th Street. But due to the coronavirus, the city's decision to reduce spending to only essential items, that water line replacement between 3rd and 4th Street has been put on hold. The State Home has agreed to allow the city to use 20,000 cubic yards of their stockpiled material for city projects. The city has a 4-year window to use that material. Installation of the State Home boundary fence by city employees is scheduled for May. The necessary survey work will be paid for by the state. The repair of the wet well at the wastewater treatment plant is progressing. The work is expected to be completed about mid-May. The utility department provided their list of repairs that will be necessary when Golden West begins the second phase of their fiber optic project. Construction work that was expected to begin this spring on the Canton housing site has been delayed due to the coronavirus. And John will meet with Simons regarding road reconstruction in front of the Evans Plunge and the fence adjacent to the cemetery. For the folks present, did I forget anything? All right. The next meeting will be April 28th, 1 o'clock. Probably be down here at the Mueller Center. We'll see if we can work out Zoom for that.
Thank you, Bob. Southern Hills Economic Development, Caitlin?
Our next meeting is July 17th with time and place to be determined.
Okay, thank you. And Southern Hills Golf Course Advisory Committee, nothing to report. Volunteer Fire Department, Ron?
Nothing to report at this time.
Okay, we'll move on in our agenda. Next item is the ordinance. We do have a second reading, ordinance 1211, the ordinance amending the fine and bond schedule for the city of Hot Springs. I'd accept a motion to approve that second reading.
I make a motion to approve the second reading of ordinance 1211 and ordinance amending the fine and bond schedule for the city of Hot Springs.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the second reading. Any comments, questions, discussion? Hearing none, I'd ask Misty if you'd call the roll.
Dave Burris,
Yes.
Ray Eckerty,
Yes.
Bill Lukens,
Yes.
Bob Nelson,
Yes.
Ron Richards,
Yes.
Allison Ritterbusch.
Yes.
Craig Romy,
No.
Caitlin Turner.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, that motion carries. We move on to resolutions. Item A, Resolution 20-13, and that's the resolution that Bob talked about to use the bump outs identified by the Department of Transportation. You do have a copy of that in your packages. I'd ask for a motion to approve that resolution.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2020-13 with one change. A resolution to use topsoil as fill material for the bump outs being constructed by the South Dakota Department of Transportation, SDDOT, during the Highway 18-385 road reconstruction project, and to strike and the possibility of trees along North River Street.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve that resolution. Are there any questions, comments, or discussion?
I have one question. On the resolution, under item 7, it talks about the location being where the police department on Highway 83-5 North River Street, where the police department is located. Isn't that actually across from the police department at the bridge?
It's next to the tattoo shop.
Yes. When I put it together, it was a generalization to give an idea of the general area that they're going to be. But yes, it is in front of the tattoo shop.
So as long as that understanding is there, that we're not going to create a new dig up some concrete and,
No.
okay.
And the intent of the resolution is to understand that there are going to be bump outs. So wherever those bump outs are going to be, wherever the state says, here's a bump out, if the underground structure allows it, which in these cases we believe that it does, that the council is okay with putting topsoil in there for plantings. If the state were to change something, the intent of the resolution is to not lock us into this, but to recognize these are the general areas that right now the state is identifying for bump outs, and do you want plantings in them versus concrete?
Thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions, comments, or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That resolution carries. We also have Resolution 2020-14, and that's a resolution to amend the citywide fee worksheet. You do have a copy of that in your packages. I'd ask for a motion to make that amendment.
I make a motion to approve Resolution 2020-14, a resolution to amend the citywide fee worksheet.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve Resolution 2020-14. Are there any questions, comments, or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We move on to new business. Item A, we have the South Dakota Public Library Survey, and would ask for a motion to approve and accept that.
Make a motion to discuss the application for 2019 South Dakota Public Library Survey. Second.
Okay, it's been...
And vote on it.
Okay, it's been moved to approve and accept the 2019 South Dakota Public Library Survey. Are there any questions, comments, or discussion?
I have a question. You said motion to discuss.
And vote on it.
Okay, thank you.
It's getting late. We'll get through this. Okay, there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item B is a motion to discuss and authorize the Library Director, Don Johnson, to accept the Stephanie Miller Davis Library Grant for $1,000 in support of the 2020 Summer Reading Program. And as you know, that may be somewhat delayed. A good question that you had, Allison. I would accept a motion to accept that grant.
I make a motion to authorize Library Director Don Johnson to accept the Stephanie Miller Davis Library Grant for $1,000 in support of the 2020 Summer Reading Program.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to authorize that acceptance. Are there any questions, comments, or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. You also have in your packages a motion, Airport Hain proposal by Steve Shamanik of Quality Real Estate for the 2020 crop year. I believe that was the only proposal that we received, and you do have a written copy of that. I'd accept a motion to approve that.
I got a question.
Go ahead.
Didn't you say at the last council meeting we'd have to put this back out for proposals?
No, it was accepted, just not submitted before that council meeting, so it was the only one that we received a proposal.
I'll make a motion to accept the Airport Hain proposal by Steve Shamanik of Quality Real Estate for the 2020 crop year.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to accept that proposal. And I believe that's the same conditions that we've had in previous years, 60-40 split, and the need to get the hay removed in a certain amount of time. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Well, now we come to the big item of the evening, the DOT transfer agreement, transferring the responsibility of segment of Highway 18 in exchange for the $2.8 million to be used for this construction of the suspended sidewalk along North River Street. I'd go ahead and ask for a motion to approve that transfer.
I'll make a motion to approve and authorize the mayor to sign the Department of Transportation transfer agreements, transferring all responsibility over certain segment of U.S. Highway 18 in Fall River County from the state to the city in exchange for $2.8 million to be used for the construction of a suspended sidewalk along North River Street.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to make that transfer. I guess as a part of the discussion, I'd just like to make a couple of comments. First of all, the comments that I've received, particularly this last week, have been either verbally through email, have been overwhelmingly in favor. The only negative comments I've seen here have appeared on some of the chat rooms. And one of the things that did trouble me a little bit, that they, one of the comments was that it's Cotty's sidewalk. And I wish I could take credit for it. I've got here from the 70s a sketch for a cantilevered sidewalk to go along North River Street. It was proposed by a Mr. Mueller. I believe we're sitting in his building, the building that's named for him right now. I wish I could take credit for that, but in the 70s, I was in Pease Air Force Base, New Hampshire, flying air refueling missions, pulling alert at Goose Bay, Labrador, and over in Southeast Asia, flying missions in support of our war in Vietnam. This cantilever sidewalk design is pretty much what we've tried to put forward here. Got two bridges, both located approximately where we had the two bridges, and it was a vision of improving our downtown area. Tonight we have an opportunity to put that plan finally into action many, many years later. I want to thank the city staff, members of council, particularly on the Public Works Committee, for all the discussions, the questions that have been asked, the research that has been done. I think we've done our due diligence. And I think we do have a significant amount of support from the community. And that the process has been a long one. It's been a hard one, because DOT initially called our sidewalk an enhancement, and that if we wanted it, we'd have to pay for it. And we've negotiated, worked with them, done studies, and with the support of the governor, we've been able to come to a place where we are right now. And I'm happy to say that I think we're in a very good place. One of the other comments that was made was that, well, we have a real high maintenance cost for the sidewalk itself, that those panels would have to be changed every 10 years. And as I recall from our discussions with the design firm that we hired to do the feasibility study of that sidewalk, that was not true. In fact, I had an opportunity to call the actual supplier that would be supplying those composite panels. They're fiber reinforced, they're lightweight to cut the design cost of the support system down. The design life on those panels is not 10 years, but 75 years. They do have a protective friction coating that with real high traffic would have to be looked at in 25 years, but most likely would last for over 50 years. So I just want to get some of those facts out there, and I really, again, want to talk about the support that we've received from our governor. I look at Deadwood's Main Street Square. That cost $4 million. The state kicked in $2 million to help support that. Deadwood had to come up with $2 million. Of course, they've got gambling revenues that help them do that quite easily. We don't have that kind of money. All we had to trade was the upper part of University. And one of the things that the governor made very clear when she was discussing that with us, that, you know, I'm not here to give handouts. The community has got to be invested in making their own improvements. And that's one of the ways that we can make an investment to help make our community better. Tonight, I think this is one of the most important votes this council will ever make. It's an opportunity that other towns have not had. And again, I go back to my hometown of Leeds, South Dakota, has got a railing that runs along one side of Main Street because that was the DOT approved design. And nobody stood up and said, hey, we can't live with that. Hill City, when they did the construction through Hill City, nobody said, hey, the sidewalk and the way that that's designed is inadequate to hold the number of tourists that walk through Hill City every day in the summer. Now, DOT has had to come in with $500,000 to correct that, and that construction is ongoing. This is a state, federal project, and they hold the master key as far as how it's going to be designed. They've worked with us. They've approved the principle that we've come up with, but they do have the final say. And if you as a council decide to vote no tonight on this, that $2.8 million goes away. It goes to some other community in South Dakota to help make them better. So with that, are there any further comments, questions, or discussions from the council?
Started off well.
Okay. Yeah, I got a list of them. The first thing I want to say to the council and I want to say to the public is, as I've looked at this suspended sidewalk, for me there's certainly one decision that needs to be made, and depending on how you feel on the first one, a second decision that needs to be made individually. The first one is the design of the suspended sidewalk better than the design that the state is proposing? I happen to believe that it is. So if you believe that, then the next question that needs to be asked is, at what cost? I've talked with 50 to 75 people about this sidewalk. And initially, one of the people I talked with said, well, I really don't care. And I showed him the diagram that the mayor had shared when he did his presentation. And when they looked at the sidewalk with a nice, beautiful river there, their comment to me was, well, I don't care about that sidewalk. I want a river that looks like that. But to that person's credit, they were willing to listen to why I felt that the suspended sidewalk is the better option. And in every case, every person that I talked with, once they actually understood the trade-offs for the state design and the benefits for the city's design, every one of them agreed that the city's plan, the suspended sidewalk, was a better option. once they actually understood what was going on, the very next question they asked me is, what's it going to cost me? So that's where I'm at. As I've said, I think the suspended sidewalk is the better option, but at what cost? I agree with the mayor. This is a very, very important decision. I don't take it lightly. But in all of the South Dakota Municipal League training that I've been to, what they have hammered home is our number one responsibility is financial stewardship. What are we going to do to make sure that the city is in good financial standings and that we're not jeopardizing that future? My questions hinge on that. I believe this is the right solution, but at what cost? Every one of those people that I talked with, I told them, the city owes you an explanation. We owe you the facts. Here's what the cost is going to be. Craig and I have had the conversation. At what cost? Are you willing to pay $1,000 extra over the $2.8 million? Are you willing to pay $5,000 over? I am. But I need to know those costs. I need to make a financially informed decision about whether this is the right decision for the community going forward. So that's where my discussions, or my questions are. I want to thank John. I've been a pain in his butt along these lines, and he has done everything he can to give me questions or give me answers as soon as he can. So thank you for that. I appreciate that. I've understood you, John, to say that the decision that the council makes tonight is not our last opportunity to decide whether we want the sidewalk or not. Am I misstating that? That we have one more opportunity to opt out of the sidewalk. Is that correct? And if it is, can you help me understand what you mean by that?
You've been presented a draft agreement with the DOT spelling out the terms of the agreement. Not something you're going to sign tonight. They will prepare the final draft. The final draft will have to include specific items that we discussed in public works. As to where does the road start? Do the approaches still belong to the DOT? Are the property legal restrictions correct? Any other fine-tuning details that the DOT sees in the negotiation process will also come forward. Then you will be presented with a final document to review and consider signing. It becomes final at that point, and you're committed to it at that point.
Okay. And you talk about the need to make this decision soon because it needs to be designed and it needs to be into the state so that they can move forward with their decision. Do you see that the document that's in front of us tonight, the two documents that are in front of us tonight, will change significantly from that final document or documents?
No, I do not see it changing
Okay.
substantially, but it also gives us time to get more specific information for costs as this thing develops.
Okay. So then, given that, the first question I have is on page 1 of the document, the joint powers agreement, concerning the highway construction. It's on page 1, item 3A. At whatever point we sign this document, or we authorize, if we were to authorize the mayor to sign the document, it says the city will procure and retain professional design consultant services. So at that point, we are going to incur a cost in hiring those folks, is that correct?
When you sign the actual document, it's not a draft.
Okay. So then we hire the professional design consultant. They do all their design work, and they come back and they tell us that the final cost of the sidewalk is going to be different than the dollars that they provided to us on April 1st, which, again, thank you very much. You broke it down. You recognized the concerns about the cost of the sidewalk. You were able to, or you suggested by removing the second sidewalk and removing the electric vehicle charging points, that we could get the dollar value down from 2.832 to 2.657. Again, not locking anybody into numbers, but just recognizing that you're trying to get the cost down as low as possible. If the design comes back and it's higher than these current figures, then we have to figure out where we're going to come up with those dollars. Further on in the document, 3E, at this point they're talking about when we have to have the final plans to the state, and that's December 4th, 2020. If the city fails to meet the deadline set forth in the paragraph, then the state may at its sole option terminate this agreement. So is that the final deadline then? Where the city could say at that point that, no, we don't want to go forward with this? Am I understanding that correctly?
You're now on the next joint powers agreement?
I think I'm still in concerning the highway construction.
3E.
Yeah.
3E.
3E.
Right, but there's a 3E on the first document and a 3E on the second, and the first concern was on the first
I'm
document.
thinking he's
and
still
this is
on the first
second.
document.
I'm still on the concerning highway construction.
And then fourth sentence down.
Okay.
So this is December 4th that deadline, that final deadline that you're talking about, that the city could still opt out of this, these two agreements?
I would think you would commit before December 4th, because you're going to have to commit to an agreement that's going to pay for your consultant to do the design long before the deadline for the design will be submitted.
Okay, so we're going to, we would incur a cost to design that then may influence the decision about whether we want to go forward or not. Okay. Then going down to 3F, this is the one that we've talked about, I believe, in either admin finance or public works that concerns me the most. The last sentence of paragraph 3F. If the lowest responsible total combination bid for the city project and the state project does not have as part of that bid the lowest bid on the state project, the city will pay the state the difference between that portion of the successful combination bid attributable to the state project and the lowest bid on the state project. The city will pay the state within 30 days of receiving a billing from the state. So I'm understanding this to mean that if our portion of the project increases the state's cost of the project, then we pay that difference. Am I understanding that correctly?
The way I interpret that, Bob, is that the state will be looking for the lowest overall bid on their roadway project. The contractor for that low bid is selected may have a higher cost on the city project portion than the lowest bid on the city project portion. By law, you can't mark his bid up over a certain percentage to be justified. He would be within the limitations of how high you go with a bid that has been submitted by a subcontractor to install that suspended sidewalk. But yes, there is a potential that we would not get the lowest bidder on the suspended suspended sidewalk construction, and we would have to pay the difference of the suspended sidewalk cost presented by the low bid contractor.
So there's the possibility that the city will owe the state a difference somewhere down the road. So we don't know what that difference is until the bid is actually let. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So those are okay. And then the now moving on to the joint powers agreement for transfer of Highway 18 segment. Item number 1. The last sentence there talks about the general location of the transfer statement. And I'll talk a little bit about that, going over the city attorney's comments to both agreements. But taking everyone to the Exhibit A, that's the actual map that the state is proposing. The two little squares, as I understand this drawing, are the bridges themselves. And there were early discussions about how far from the bridges themselves will the state continue to provide repair maintenance. Is it within 10 feet of each end of the bridges? Is it within 100 feet of the bridges? There was excitement, at least from me, I may have misread the conversations, that the city's responsibility would start at the top of University rather than actually at the bridges themselves. So that's the reason that I highlighted the general location of the transfer. Item 3A. Again, for me, I'm really, maybe I'm misfocusing on the fact that we're going to be signing these agreements at some point, and at that point we're obligated to it. 3A, the state will allocate $2,800,000 of state highway funds to the city. At that point, we're locked into it, I believe. Okay, so then I get into Garland's response to reading the two agreements. And my intent is to not misquote you, so if I do, catch me right away. I don't want to represent anything that's not accurate. In Garland's comments, he talks about to ensure that there are not surprises in the near future concerning any repairs or maintenance. I would have the city engineer inspect the transfer segment of the road and make any comments. That was suggested earlier. There's no general description of the transfer segment, such as the quarter mile south of 24th Street as an example. I would like to see some description like that. I greatly suggest all these legal descriptions be reviewed and check against any previous deeds or plats to ensure that they are correct. He proposes the language to be changed to acts, errors, or omissions in both sentences in section 5, so that there is a consistency in language and meaning. Highlights again, the city is responsible for the entire cost related to design services for the city project. I focused on that a little bit and knowing what we're going to have to hire an engineer. And then the other part, the section I believe requires the most attention is the part that requires the city to pay the difference between contract bids if the total contract awarded results in a higher cost for the state project. I just want everyone to understand this section so they can make the best decision, because the city possibly could be liable to the state for the difference in bids. Section 3I needs to be read and understood by everyone because it lays out the possibility of issues between the city project and the state project. This is basically a contract between the city and the Department of Transportation, and if there is a dispute, we are agreeing that the head of that department, Secretary of the Department of Transportation, is the person who gets to make the final decision regarding the dispute, and they have the power to terminate the city project. This may be a standard provision in regards to a project like we are entering into with the state. However, I believe the city needs to understand and realize the consequences of this provision. So for me, it comes down to, in my discussions with the folks as I was presenting why I believed that the suspended sidewalk was a better option, I promised them that I would not vote for a blank check. So what I'm asking for, as difficult as it may be, is I'm not talking to the penny, but I need to see some costs. And I recognize that the final thing I want to talk about is my request to John to go back and to get some potential increase in the project is around the support rods. I don't know if that's the right name for them, but in the picture that the mayor showed everyone during his presentation, the actual pillars that will support the sidewalk are placed every 50 feet. And in that picture you can see some support rods coming down, and you see some greenery at the base of them where they are actually adjacent to the sidewalk. Those rods, for me, don't work. They're visually unappealing. The space that's taken up in the greenery where they mount will reduce parking along the riverside. And I feel that there'll be a maintenance nightmare for our street sweepers in the summer and our snow plows in the winter, trying to weave in and out every 50 feet of these pillars. So I recognize that will potentially increase the cost. And as I said earlier, I'm not opposed to paying more than $2.8 million for it. Just need to know what that amount is, and specifically how we're going to pay for it. I don't want to put Misty into a catatonic state by agreeing to an unknown cost and not knowing how we're going to pay for it. So for me, I take the financial stewardship very seriously, and I can't vote for a blank check. But I want to vote for this project. I believe it is the right solution for Hot Springs. We just need to know what costs, so you can tell us you support that. And that's where I'm at on this. Thank you.
Okay, other discussion?
Well, yeah. I was, I guess, part of the discussion, or included in some of the emails between Bob and John, and the response we got back from ISG on what's it going to cost us to get rid of, and I'm going to call them guy wires just because I don't know what they're going to call them. So what's it going to add to the project to get rid of the guy wires? So we're going to have to, essentially, what's it going to cost to beef up the supports? What's it going to cost to beef up the foundations, to go down deeper, whatever, so that we don't need that additional that guy wire to provide that additional support? And they came back and said it could cost 5 to 10% additional to get rid of that. And so I went through and said, okay, if we add 10% to the cost of the sidewalk, and the spreadsheet they provided us broke the sidewalk into two pieces, one from Jennings to the City Hall, one from City Hall down to, well, the remainder of, down to about, what is it, about Pistol Patties, is that where? And then, so I added 10% to that. I also added 10% to the contingency. They put in about a 10% contingency. So I added 10% to that, and then I also ran a case where I added 5%. And And then when you start adding that 10%, it certainly bumps it past the 2.8 million. So then I ran a couple of cases where, okay, if you pull out the charging stations, what does it look like? And if you pull out the second bridge, because you could do the second bridge at another time, what does the economics look like? Can we afford it at that point? So if the council's interested in what my spreadsheet looks like, I did bring copies if you'd like to see that.
Mayor, I'd like to comment. Back when the negotiations first started with DOT, the estimated cost for the suspended sidewalk was $3.1 million, if you remember that. And looking at the spreadsheet we have here, it's a little less than $3.1 million for the sidewalk. But listening to the discussion that Bob had, I concurred with a lot of what he had to say. Especially the design, the latest design. I thought it was totally ugly. Wouldn't go good, wouldn't look good. It would create maintenance problems, snow removal, with guy wires out there. But I guess I'm getting farther than what I wanted to go. I looked at the deadline date for December 4th to finalize this. And my thoughts were, at this time, I would like to table this resolution or this motion until at least the new council sets on board. I don't oppose the suspended sidewalk, but the additional costs I know are going to come. 10% of, 15% or 20% of $3 million is a lot of money. So having said that, right now, if we were going to finalize this on a vote today, I would say no. So having said that, I would ask that the council right now table this discussion until after we have the new council set on board.
And John, can you give an impact on the effect of getting the design done if this council tables it?
Getting the design done will take a minimum of 4 months. Preliminary drawings have to be submitted according to the current schedule that hasn't changed yet. We've got to have those by September 14th. Preliminary design and final design on December 4th. Engineering-wise, I do not see how it can be done in that short amount of time.
I have a comment.
Yeah, go ahead, Craig.
I didn't talk to as many people as Bob has, but after your thing on Facebook, I had a lot of phone calls and I went out of my way to talk to about 40, 45 people. The conclusion I came up with is I had, it's kind of equal yes and no's, but I had more people saying that this ought to come to the vote of the people. They said that just like when they wanted the plunge bond. So in my opinion, I kind of agree with them. Maybe it should come to the vote of the people. I don't know where we'd pay the extra. Right now, we're putting money into the plunge and golf course at tunes of thousands of dollars just to make them float. If we have to pay extra for this bridge, I know we're getting money from the state, and we don't know what the extra is going to be. Where's the money going to come from? Water department can't support everything in town. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, any other comment?
Bill, you weren't finished with your presentation, were you?
Well, I've got some, and it's my opinion on capital projects, and I worked a lot of years in capital projects, and they're difficult because, you know, you go down to Ace Hardware, and if you want a bag of birdseed, the price is marked. It's $4.37 or whatever for a bag of birdseed. Capital project is different. You go through stages, and the closer you get, every step you take, you get a better defined price, and the risk of something diminishes with every step you take. We're at a position now where the risk of that price changing is less now than it was 6 months ago. But there's still some risk out there. Now, we've tried, when I say we, ISG, who is the design firm that's done the conceptual design, has done the preliminary design, they have taken into account some of that risk by putting in a 10% contingency. They have done their research, and they've told us that when they first started looking at materials of construction, there weren't that many suppliers, but now there are more suppliers, so the cost of materials may actually go down. So that's a good thing. We have an estimated cost based on engineering judgment. We've got a contingency built in. Garland has reviewed the contract, and yeah, there's uncertainties in there, and when you ain't driving the train, that adds risk and uncertainty, and we're not driving the train. And so there are some risks and uncertainties. One of the other things that I'll just throw out there that's a little different is, one of the big things you never want to do is build serial number one. Well, that's the other good thing, is we are not building serial number one. There are other installations like this around the country. So that's good news, is we're not inventing something. The numbers I looked at is, you know, the worst case, by adding 10%, by getting rid of the guy wires. I give away all my papers, Dave, so for the public's benefit. Right now, the ISG's best case, their estimate with everything in is $2,832,776. That's 2 bridges, electric car chargers, and a 10% contingency. If you add 10% onto that because of the getting rid of the guy wires, that bumps it up to almost $3,098,000. Okay, that kind of makes you suck air, seize up a little bit. So my first case was saying, okay, let's get rid of the car chargers. Well, that drops us down to $2,992,000. So my next case was, okay, let's get rid of the second bridge. We'd all like it, but that could be put in at a later date. That drops us down with a full-blown spending all our contingency to $2,859,000. On a $2.8 million project, $59,000 over, yeah, we got to find $59,000 somewhere. And I know you can't just say, well, we got to find it somewhere, but on a capital project that size, that's not an insurmountable mountain to climb. That's, you know, if that was a $4 million number, that, you know, that would be a killer concern. If we say, you know, beefing up those supports is only going to cost us 5%, then we're actually under budget. $2,759,536. There's still unknowns. The place we're in is, if we wait much longer, I appreciate what Ray is saying. We wait much longer, we lose our engineering window to even get the state the information they need. We wait too long, we wait much longer, the decision gets made for us, and we better fall in love with 11-foot travel lanes and the state design. It would be wonderful if the state would say, you know, we ought to put this off a year. But that's also something we have no control over. We ain't driving the train. We're somewhere back a long way from the engine. And we've got a hard decision to make. It's a risky decision to make. I personally don't think it's as I don't know that it's I'm not sure what word I'm looking for. Yeah, it's a bit of a scary decision, but it's not an outlandish decision. We're not making $1 million decision. We're making a fairly, if we decide to vote yes tonight, it's a relatively manageable risk. It doesn't mean we don't have to work hard at keeping costs down, finding other revenue sources to help pay for this. But if we want to do this, we got to take a step. We have to get out of the gate. It's either get out of the gate or get off, you know, or quit the rodeo, in my opinion. So I'll stop talking.
Okay, any other comments?
Problem I have is I haven't seen a whole lot of projects come in with the right budget. Usually there's changes, and change orders, and all stuff that's unforeseen, but you know, you just never know. So it's kind of like a crapshoot right now. Think about it. We don't know for sure.
Mayor, can I ask the attorney a clarifying question? John and I we're just on different pages about what his letter says and what this agreement has. Garland, do you have the letter that you wrote?
No.
You don't have it. So I'm going to read it to you, and this is in regard to the cost overruns and who's responsible for what portion. And if the city is just responsible for the city's portion of that. So Garland, in your letter, this would be the third page, second paragraph, about the sixth sentence down. The portion that you believe requires the most attention is the part that requires the city to pay the difference between contract bids if the total contract awarded results in a higher cost for the state project. So the agreement requires the state to take individual bids for both projects and then take and then we'll take the lowest bid for both projects. If there's a single bid for the state project, and that bid is lower than what is included in the accepted bid, then the city must pay the difference. So that's not in our project, that's in the state road project. So we're talking about your estimates of $56,000 for the city's project, but that's the amount that scares me. And you go on to say, for example, the state receives a bid for the state project for $100,000. Well, it's going to be much greater than that, but the state, however, accepts a bid from another contractor because their total bid was the lowest. However, when looking at the winning bids breakdown, the cost of implementing the state project will now cost $120,000. Under this agreement, the city is responsible for the additional $20,000 of the state project. Is that true? Am I reading that correctly?
Yeah, the way I read that section, that's why I pointed it out, that I was concerned with, okay? So, if there's a bid for the state project, and that bid is $50,000 individually, but then they're going to accept the bid that has the lowest total amount. Well, if they accept that bid for the lowest total amount, and that portion of the state's project is $60,000 in that total bid amount, then we would have to offset that $10,000.
So not only cost overruns for our portion, but we'd also be responsible for the difference it may not happen, but in the circumstance where the lowest bid has a higher state bid project, my understanding of this and what you're saying is then the city's also responsible for that.
Correct. So, yeah, just kind of, it's a confusing provision. So basically, when they're doing the bid process, they're asking for individual bids for the city project and the state project. Okay, and then they're asking for bids for the total project.
Overall project.
Yeah. They're going to accept the lowest bid for the overall project. But in looking at their numbers, if they accept that bid from Craig, and in his bid, his portion of the state's project is more expensive than say Dave's individual bid for the state project, we will have to pay that difference. It's kind of confusing.
There's two standards that we're be stepping on. One is the state side of it, and the overrun will be paying the difference, and our individual project for the city.
And I think it's important to remember that that may not happen.
It may
I just
not
want to
happen, but
clarify
that is
that's
a
the
consequence
case.
that we have to think about.
Yeah, that's why I pointed it out, just to make sure everybody, it's still confusing, it probably sounds confusing the way I'm explaining it. Does everybody understand that?
No, that's
Okay.
pretty much the way it is.
But I just wanted to really point that out. I mean, I kind of doubt it would happen, because, I don't know, I kind of doubt it would happen, but I just wanted to point it out.
We have to stop and consider the conditions that we're under. There's going to be a lot of people who's going to be throwing bids at this. A lot of folks have not been working. There's a lot of folks that are looking for work, and they'll take jobs at a little bit cheaper rate. And contractors are looking to keep themselves bolstered for the rest of the season. This virus that we're going through, it is impacting manufacturing and everything else. The virus that we have going around right now is impacting manufacturing, it's impacting construction work, highway projects, all those things are impacted. So you have unemployment is rented. So on a project like this, you're going to have multiple bidders on this. It's not going to be the normal, because we're all at work, we're all running normal. There's going to be a lot of bidders to this. You're going to have a lot of travel bidders coming to do this from out of state. So I wouldn't be a bit surprised that you're going to have multiple bidders coming in on this with different ways of bidding their contract. So I wouldn't be a bit surprised of us looking at a lot more bids coming in on this and ciphering through for this particular project. There's one other thing that no one's really touched on. The state has been known, and so has the federal government, to stop projects right in the middle of it just due to the fact of no income or project overruns or actually financial problems with the nation. We are looking at that right now. Just because we proceed with this and we get halfway through the program does not mean that the state or federal government is going to come in and say that we cannot finish this. If some of you remember, the highway just got finished going in Nebraska. They didn't have money for that for quite a few years. And that was during a project run. And that is not uncommon. And not just South Dakota, North Dakota, it's common all over the United States. So we can get 3 months down the road or a year down the road, and this impact that we're having financially through our country could actually put a stop to this project mid-run. And that's just, that's something that we have to also think about. That's something that, I don't know, nobody's actually even brought up, but I've been asked quite a few times that, what do we do without the money that's coming into the state and to the county and to the city? Well, I'm more worried about what's coming into the nation, because some of this project is federal money, and some of it, just some of it is state money. So that's something else we got to keep. Just because we keep moving forward does not mean this project's going to actually happen on schedule. It would not be surprising to see the DOT put this off for 2 to 3 years.
Okay, any other comments?
So, you go ahead.
Oh,
Yep.
I was just on Councilman Roman talking about this going to a public vote. What would something like that do with this whole?
Well, again, it would have to be in the June election, and we're too late to get that onto the ballot.
This would be a
But,
total cost to the city, wouldn't it?
It would be a total cost to the city if we did do a special election. And I don't know what the time limits are, Misty, on that.
It would, yeah, I would say, what was it for the plunge, 3 to 6 months?
Yeah.
So it would be a delay, because you have to follow the same election guidelines that you would with your standard election. We just have to do it on our own. And I would imagine the expense would be $3,000 to $5,000 to run a special election.
And what is the timeline with us getting this portion of this project back to DOT?
Preliminary drawings were due currently September 14th, with final drawings December 4th.
So we would never be able to meet those guidelines for a public vote.
And taking into account the legal review, there's at least 3 things that we would stipulate in our answer if the vote does determine tonight to go ahead. We would want to get the station, the exact station defined as to where our responsibility as a city takes over. John is working with the state on that. We'd also want to make sure that those property definitions are correct, that Garland pointed out. We seem to always have a situation in Hot Springs that we get wrong properties. And I think that we can clarify that there would be a not to exceed cost that the city would pay. If a contractor bids on it, it would not exceed that $2.8 million. And then it would be up to the state to determine whether they fund that or they don't. But I don't want to be like you, held hostage if one contractor comes in and bids low on the actual street construction, but on the sidewalk construction comes in considerably above what our estimate is.
So Mayor, that's what my follow-up questions are regarding, is if we do the draft, if we agree to the draft, then what does that leave us to be able to go back to the table and address some of what Garland has asked for, some of these things that we're concerned of, like Bob is concerned of, a kind of a blank check kind of feel that we have to it. When I was reading this, I noticed that the state had a lot of safety provisions around themselves, which they should, absolutely should, and I would hope that they would appreciate that we're also trying to create that for our city as well, and would be able to go back to the drawing board as far as the draft of this, and come back with a final, agreement for us to consider that would at least maybe move us to a little bit more information that would help us really solidify that. But that's what I'm kind of wondering is where are we left as far as what of our options if we agree to a draft right now, which I also I'm thinking we might need to amend the motion to say specifically draft because the signature says when they have to sign it that they wanted our verbiage in there. So I'm wondering, one, if we did agree that we'd want to change our motion to that, we agreed to the draft first and foremost, because it doesn't say that, but I don't know if you guys agree with me or not. But then where does that move us to, and how much, and then how much time do we have to go back to the drawing board with them and come back with a final proposal? And then the other one is if we have the timeline, John, I'm trying to mark your timeline to make sure that we have this, and there's not much time, I see that. But if we have to get a preliminary design, that would mean that we need to put up some money to get that before the 2.8 and final draft is agreed to, if I'm tracking this right.
Can't. That's the purpose of moving this along as quick as we can to get the final document, because it says in this document that we can't hire the design consultant until we sign the final agreement.
And that design is $408,000 is the estimate, and that's outside of the 2.8 for the construction.
But wouldn't they have to award the contract before we could get the?
Nope, we have to have the design.
So they have to do the design, but that design person may not be the person that gets the contract, is really what's going to come down to. You're looking, what? Right. That's not right, John?
No, but ISG has been approved to do the design, but we have to commit to a contract to pay for them because their design, the total cost package is part of the 2.8 million. It's design, administration, construction, and all the documentation that goes with it for the DOT is included in that 2.8 million.
But ISG may not get the bid for the construction.
They're not doing the construction.
They're not doing the construction. ISG is not a construction company, they're a design company. And once that contract for the design is given, that $2.8 million will be drawn, that their payment will be drawn out of the $2.8 million.
Okay, so then I guess the question going to, if we approve the draft, do we feel like we can go back to the state with some of the things that Garland had discussed in him? And thank you, Garland. It helped quite a bit as I was trying to navigate all of this. So I guess that's my question, is I feel like there's a little more safety. I understand what you're saying, Bill, as far as there is some risk, but I still feel like there's a lot going on that it's needs to be clarified. And so I guess that's my question to you, Johnny. You look thrilled with me.
I believe you would have a great opportunity to present your concerns when the draft is presented, the money is locked down, and they would rewrite a final. We were able to take out 2 bridges from the original agreement, just a phone call from the governor here. So I think we have a pretty good chance of getting what we asked for, would play along with their rules. I believe the mayor is right, asking for clarification on what that means, a not to exceed budget. I believe Michael Bain would be more than happy to keep this thing moving along.
So there could be some more safety precautions like we're discussing to not exceed would be.
This is a draft, and we have that's why we had our attorney look at it to see that we're not being unduly taken advantage of, and he provided the facts that we were in a couple of cases that we need to nail those down so that that we are protected, that we the city are protected.
Yeah, that was absolutely what I was looking for, is those protections built in for us, and there didn't seem to be a whole lot there, and I wouldn't mind building in just a little bit more. I think this design is beautiful. I think it would enhance downtown. I'm excited about it, but I feel like a little bit more protection going between the draft and to the final and with a do not exceed and something that would help give it, solidify those numbers would be fantastic.
What's your opinion of approving the draft but wanting changes in? What's your legal opinion of that? If we approve the draft tonight, but we request changes to it, is that the way it should go?
Well, it seems like we kind of had a wrong motion anyway, because it was a draft, and this isn't the final draft. When are we expecting the final draft? Any idea?
When we approve this, we've got to approve this before we can get a final draft.
And typically it is a draft until it's approved, right?
Yeah. I would amend the motion to state that, I guess exactly,
Draft.
I would take out mayor to sign and add draft, approve the draft of the DOT transfer agreement. That's how I would amend the motion.
Amended that the mayor to sign the draft.
I would amend it to approve and authorize the draft of the DOT transfer agreement.
I think there's specific signatures that are needed though, that we'd have to approve the mayor to sign, right?
No, what we're looking at is a draft of what they are anticipating the final to look at.
So you don't have to sign
But I
this?
don't have to sign this draft agreement
I see.
because we've got some concerns with it,
Okay,
and we need to get those clarified.
Okay.
But we are committing to go ahead and with the bargaining back and forth, and once they come with a final, either with those changes or they may not agree to those changes, then this council would vote on that final, what their final
What the
proposal.
final is, okay.
So should we say and authorize the draft with modifications?
Yes, I think that should be in there.
Nelson and Turner made the motion and seconded, so as we get closer to amending it.
Quick question. When Bob was talking about the part we take over, so do I understand we will take over from the stoplight to the first bridge? After the second bridge, on up over the hill, clear to the city limits? According to this,
Up to the bypass, that's what I understand.
so the only thing we're not gonna have is 2 bridges. We're gonna have everything before and after the bridges.
Yes.
So we're not just taking over up top like we talked about.
Well, that's what we have to define, are those stations, where those bridges begin, because the bridge structure, it also includes the box fill
Yeah, I know.
area and where those begin, and that's what we have to get nailed down with the state to make that determination.
I think our cutoff points ought to be like 300 feet prior to the bridge and 300 feet past the bridge. So you're getting out of that fill, you're getting completely off that hill. You're starting basically up at the top by the church and where the clinic used to be. Because you want to get off that hill. If you stay on that hill and accept that hill, you will forevermore be dealing with sloughing of that portion of University. That's just a given. That's just the way it is. Because you're on the downhill slope of that and the bottom end of the beginning of the bridge, going down from University to the stoplight, all that is backfill and all that is in motion. That's what we see. Everybody understand what I'm saying? So we need to state a proper amount and take a darn good look at where that fill starts and how far we want to be away from that, because that's where that slough is going to be. that is going to be the most major cost of repairing that university if there's ever a problem in the future.
Okay, other comments? If not, do we have an amendment? Oh, I'm sorry, Bob.
That's fine. To Bill's comment, in 36 years working for the federal government, I never saw a federal contract that didn't have change orders. It's a fact of life. And I appreciate the numbers, that you looked at, but no guy wire 10% or no guy wire 5%. We're right around the 2.8 million, and it doesn't take many change orders to get us over there. And again, John, thank you for breaking the numbers down. I think I responded to your email when you broke them down first that I was doing a happy dance because we were at 2.6 million versus 2.8 million with the contingencies built in. And then I went and messed everything up by saying that for me, the support rods needed to come out for the reasons that I had mentioned earlier. Yeah, that's just me. There may be 7 people that don't have a problem with those guy wires. So I'm just mentioning that they're a concern for me. But from what I'm understanding, and again, I said, I want to vote for this. I think this is the right solution. So with what we're talking about, a change to an amendment or a draft, making a change to the motion for a draft, identifying the specific distances that the city is going to be responsible for along Dave's lines. And then what I'm really excited about is the mayor agreeing that, am I understanding correctly, Mayor, that you're on board with a not to exceed clause of 2.8 million? That addresses my blank check, and I'm voting for it, but that needs to be there. We need to know. So if this is simply voting for this draft with changes going forward, and we're not locking ourselves into any money at this point, meets my concerns.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay, do we have an amendment then?
I may need to read it a couple times here until you folks tell me I got it right. But my understanding is that I need to amend the motion to approve and authorize the mayor. Okay, see, I already got it wrong.
To approve the draft.
Draft with
Okay.
modifications.
Yep, well, I got that in here. Let's see. Okay, whoever knows how to state the amendment, go ahead and state it, and I'll agree to it.
I have to approve and authorize the draft with modifications.
Could you speak into the mic,
Yep.
Misty? We can't hear you, please.
Move to approve and authorize the draft with modifications. And then just take out mayor to sign and read the rest of it.
Okay. That's my amended motion.
Okay. Okay, the amended motion then is to approve the draft as modified. Is there any discussion on the amended motion?
Yes, and to confirm that we'll have a not to exceed clause in it, and it will have the area that the state is retaining responsibility for specifically defined in it. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Well, that's what we're going to propose to the DOT.
Right.
Now, whether they accept it or not.
I understand that, but that's our proposal back to them. Those are what we feel need to be in the draft so that we can vote on a final.
Yes.
I'm on board with that.
Okay, any other comments, questions, or discussion?
That 2.8 ceiling, is that without change orders or with change orders?
Well, as I understand it, not to exceed, that would be not to exceed that.
That would be overall project cost.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be part of the negotiation with DOT, with the mayor. I mean, they might throw back, with a 10% overage or, not to exceed 2.8 million with 5%, 10% overage. That would be between the mayor and DOT negotiating it out.
The biggest thing that it does protect us from is that contractor discrepancy of the building, of the sidewalk. And if we do get it, for some reason, would get a contractor that would lowball the road construction and highball the sidewalk cost, we're protected.
So then what we're doing is we're pushing back on the state's comfort zone, the little blanket that they have wrapped around itself for their protection. We're pushing back on that.
Right.
We're not approving the project, we're approving the amendments to the draft to resubmit to the state.
Right.
To see whether they will accept them. So we're not obligating the city to any money at this point.
That's how you see it too, Garland, right? You're shaking your head, okay.
Yeah, that's no obligation for money, just approving the draft to move forward with the state.
We're saying we're anxious for that $2.8 million. So.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. We appreciate it. We just also want to have safety nets for the city.
Exactly. What's
So-
the same thing that they're providing for themselves in this agreement right now?
So then by doing that, that also gives us an opportunity to set up another meeting or two with the public to ask them, or to allow them to ask us more questions.
Get more education out there, and give me time to take a look at some of the prices and stuff that we're looking at for maintenance on university.
To Ray's point about putting it off for the next council or a public vote, I'm not opposed to a public vote. I'm not afraid of a public vote. But I see it as our responsibility. That's why we get the big bucks to make this decision. If the decision we make, the public doesn't like, they can still take it to a public vote. We're not excluding the option of the public saying, we don't like your vote. But I'm willing to make the hard decision, either for or against, and let them tell us if they don't like it. But I do believe they need more information from us, and it's our obligation to provide that to them. And I think this gives us the opportunity to do that.
We need to make sure the public knows that we're going to talk to them about it. Because, just because it's a public works, it's not. I mean, a lot of people don't, know when public works is and don't want to call the city, see if it's on the calendar, where it's at and all that stuff. Can we put it in the paper or on the radio or something? Do we put it in the paper? When we talk about
Our minutes are in the paper.
Yeah, our minutes are in the paper. We do have a Facebook page. The chamber announces it, so there's opportunities that people, other than going and knocking on doors, I guess. I don't know of any other way that we can do it without expending a lot of money.
Our minutes might be in the paper, but we're not saying when we're doing it yet.
Well, it'll be on our agenda too. It's on the agenda tonight. It'll be on a future agenda. That's the public notice.
Yeah, but they'll know when we're going to do it. That's what I'm saying. There's no date set when we're going to talk about it.
Looking out here, it seems like the public isn't terribly concerned about being here and distancing themselves. I think we have an opportunity to make a public announcement and say that we're going to present this. Come on down if we need to do it 2 times, 3 times. They're asking us to tell them as much as we can.
Okay.
And I personally believe we owe that to them to get the information out.
I agree.
Okay, are there any further discussion on the amended motion? Okay, if we are voting for that, and you're voting yes, that means that we're willing to accept that $2.8 million with the majority of the provisions indicated by the South Dakota DOT, with the exception of where the construction project starts. We need to get a clear description of the properties, and that's our responsibility to do that, and will clarify that not to exceed $2.8 million cost, that, so we won't get stuck with a disparaging bid. A vote no means that we are accepting the DOT design as is. I'd ask Misty if you would call the roll.
David Burris,
Yes.
Ray Eckerby,
No.
Bill Lukens,
Yes.
Bob Nelson,
Yes.
Ron Richards,
Yes.
Allison Ritterbusch,
Yes.
Craig Romy,
No.
Caitlin Turner.
Yes.
Okay, you have 6 yeses and 2 nos.
Okay, the motion is approved. Move on to the item E. So we do have the Reynolds tract. Again, that's a tract of land bordering the city. The council is required to act on that. That was discussed at planning and zoning. What was planning and zoning's recommendation?
That was approved to go through. Let me make sure, oh, I pulled it aside because I thought you'd ask me that.
Okay.
It was, yes, it was approved to move to city council. So yes, they approved it and thought that it was, should go to city council.
Okay. I'd ask for a motion to approve that plat.
I make a motion to approve a plat of Reynolds Tract located in the north half and northwest quarter, section 26, township 7 south, range 5 east, Black Hills Meridian, Fall River County, South Dakota, formerly lots 5 through 18 of Cascade Valley Development and a portion of vacated South Canyon Drive, combining lots.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the plat. Are there any questions, comments, or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. We also have a plat in Boulder Falls Business Park, and you should have a copy of that in your packages. I'd accept a motion to approve that plot of those lots, S14R and S15R.
I'll make a motion to approve a plat of lots, or lot S-14R and lot S-15R of Boulder Falls Business Park, City of Hot Springs, Fall River County, South Dakota, formerly lot S-14, lot S-15, and a portion of the balance of northeast 1/4 line north of South Dakota Highway 71.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the flats listed in the Boulder Falls Business Park. And again, did planning and zoning look at those?
They did look at those and they approved it on to come to council.
Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is G. We do have our Jennings Bridge replacement contracts to be looked at, opening the bids, and so at this time we will do that. Again, as listed on the agenda, we will not be awarding these. That will be awarded by the Department of Transportation. And our first bid is from Deitzler Construction Corporation. They go through a number of bid prices. It looks like their total bid price is $1,389,988. $1,389,988. $998.09. We are scheduled to pay 20% of that, right? We do have, it looks like, a bunch of documentation to go along with that bid. And we will forward that on to the Department of Transportation. Again, we have the appropriate bid bond. This one is submitted by the Journey Group companies doing business as SFC Civil Constructors.
Journey Group?
Journey Group companies doing business as SFC Civil Constructors. They do have a summary total bid price of $1,808,258.44. Again, it looks like they do have the appropriate documentation to determine that bid price. And again, as I mentioned, they do have the bid bond, as did the other contractor. I believe there's no action that we need to take on this other than the knowledge of the amount. And it will be up to the state to determine whether that low bid is given to a company that can handle the construction. Are there any questions or comments? Okay, we move on to item 8. We do have the item to create a special allowance for utility building on 209 North 16th Street. This is a renovation of the old hospital building, I believe, and I would ask for a motion to approve that special allowance for utility building.
Make a motion to authorize the finance office to create a special allowance for utility billing at 209 North 16th for a construction period to remain in effect until April 30th, 2022, or when the renovation project is complete, whichever occurs first. The allowance includes billing for a 5/8 inch, $18.34 meter, as opposed to the 3-inch or $423.81 meter currently installed.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to create this special allowance. Are there any questions, comments, or discussion?
I'm assuming this went by Public Works.
Yes, Public Works did talk about it. Tracy has his letter about why he thinks it's appropriate. The building, the owners are trying to renovate it, so all they need is enough water for construction. The city is still going to be reading the meter monthly, so if they're consuming more water than would be typical for a 5/8 inch line, we'll be aware of it and we can manage that. Yes, Public Works is recommending approving it.
Okay. Are there any other questions, comments, or discussion?
I just want clarification. It says until April 30th, 2022, or when the renovation project is complete. So if they never complete it, we do have the opportunity to revoke this.
Yes.
Yeah. On that 2022 date.
Do they plan on working through the winter? Because that's steam heat. That takes water.
I don't,
Just
yeah,
a question.
no, I don't know.
It'll be metered, so we'll
Yeah, that was the question we specifically put to Tracy, because it is a 3-inch meter. You know, they start consuming more than what a 5/8 line would typically provide. How do we control that? And that's when he said they're going to read the meter monthly, and if they're exceeding the capacity for a 5/8 inch line, that will need to be addressed and charged appropriately.
Good.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We have a school, city facility use agreement that is to be effective May 1st, 2020. Don't know if there will be any students using that agreement at that date, but that's the effective date. I would ask for a motion to approve that school facility use agreement.
I make a motion to approve the city school facility use agreement effective May 1st, 2020.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve that use agreement. Misty, are there any significant changes in the agreement? I did not have a chance to.
This was approved by the school board at their last meeting, and the only change from last year is the term. We now have written in this agreement that there's a base year with an option to renew annually for 4 additional years, so that in the following years, if we want to continue with the agreement as written, we just require governing board approval, so we wouldn't have to rewrite it. We've kind of taken that approach to a few different contracts that we renew every year, so otherwise the language remains the same as it had in the past.
Okay. Any other questions, comments, discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We also have another plat to look at and approve. This is the vacation of several alleys. We do retain the easements for utilities at those vacated alleys, and this is up near the state home area where we just recently put in the water system for those folks, and this cleans up. There's been some changes in property ownership and making their individual property owners one tract. So I would ask for a motion to approve plat SD1 tract.
I'll make a motion to approve a plat of SD-1 tract, Grimes tract north, Grimes tract south, VA-2 tract, Fisher tract, and lot 9R of block 42, and Hagen tract, VA-2 tract, Wellnitz tract, and lots 18R through 23R of block 43, and Cruz tract, and VA-1 tract of block 44, and all of 2nd Minnetonka addition to Hot Springs, Fall River County, South Dakota, formerly lots 1 through 23, and that part of the north, south, and east-west alley vacated with this plat of block 43 and lots 1 through 14, and that part of the north, south, and east-west alley vacated with this plat of block 44.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve this transaction. Again, you see a map in your packages, and planning and zoning has looked at this, I think, multiple times, right?
Yeah, it's been over the couple of years, I believe. Yeah. It's been brought up, but it's been tabled a few different reasons, but yep, they approved this one.
Okay.
Or brought it to you guys, says, didn't see anything of concern.
And planning and zoning brings with a recommendation of approval. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in... Go ahead. Yes.
I see that Wes is out in the audience. Wes, do you have any comments? All right. Anybody else?
It's a long time coming, should have been done years ago.
Any further comments? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Second.
Motion carries. We do have item K. The finance officer has identified 2 maturing CDs and a way that we can possibly gain some more additional interest. I would ask for a motion to approve closing out 2 CDs and investing in 2 new 6-month CDs with South Dakota Fit.
I make a motion to authorize the finance officer to close out the 2 maturing CDs at First Interstate 6801001032, 701 Cemetery Perpetual Care, and 68010001033 EPMS Debt Service Reserve, and reinvest the balance in 2 new 6-month CDs with South Dakota Fit at 0.40%.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to authorize this transaction. Are there any questions, comments, or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And again, Misty, personal thanks for looking at trying to get the best interest rates you can. Thank you. We also have item L, authorize contingency funds to pay an additional $2,520 to the chamber for the additional time needed for the media coordinator who's sitting here tonight recording our meetings and helping us use Zoom. I would ask for a motion to authorize that transfer of funds to the chamber to pay Justin for his time.
I make a motion to authorize the use of contingency funds to pay an additional $2,520 to the Hot Springs Chamber of Commerce for the additional time needed by the media coordinator position through May 31st, 2020 for the City of Hot Springs. Contingency transfer resolution will follow at future meeting.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to authorize this transfer of funds. Are there any questions, comments, or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And we did have a little bump with our Dodge Durango. We did get the insurance claim. I'd ask for a motion to approve that budget supplement.
Make a motion to approve an automatic budget supplement of $2,610.70 to the police department, 101-42100-42510 for repairs of the 2019 Dodge Durango VIN 1898, damage caused by auto accident on February 3rd, 2020. Revenue received from State Farm Insurance claim number 41-04J6-37P.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve this budget supplement. Are there any questions, comments, or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Also have before you our finance officer report. Misty?
I'm going to keep this really short because it's super late, so more to come. The annual report will be presented at the next meeting. That'll take a while. You may have noticed on your bills in between that we paid a Wells Fargo client analysis fee for the month of March. The feds have dropped the rates. That's why our interest rates look so dismal on the CDs that we were looking at. And that resulted in a fee to the city of $160.25. We anticipate seeing those until those rates change. I have emailed forms to the department heads related to the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, new forms related to the emergency paid sick leave and the extended Family Medical Leave Act, as well as guidance and employee posters to make sure our employees understand the way that act affects them. Golden West has implemented a new Wi-Fi hotspot in Butler Park. No password needed, so anybody who needs access to the internet, you can get that from both our library parking lot and also at Butler Park. And just a reminder that the Secretary of State is requesting that anyone interested in voting in the June election do that by absentee voting. And they did come out with an announcement for immediate release that they will mail absentee ballot applications to all South Dakotans registered in the statewide voter registration file.
Okay, thank you, Misty. City Administrator, John?
Want to take Misty's lead and be real short and quick about this. It's been several weeks worth of COVID-19 changes every day. Multiple webinars, and speakers from senators and stakeholders all over the state, country. I'm grateful Misty has kept up with all the different changes and keeps our employees posted on what's available for our families. The long suspended sidewalk has been the #1 project since I came to work here. And I'm glad that at least we've all seen all the presentation put in front of us and made some progress toward getting a draft agreement and some future agreements with the DOT that we can enter into a formal final agreement. Glad that we finally got the 26th Street Water Assessment District alleys vacated. That too has been on my desk since I came to work here. I'm glad to see that's finally been resolved from the 2017 agreement that was originally made with those property owners. Quick happy note, the airport received an FAA CARES Act grant of $30,000 to avert crisis with relief funding to airports. It can be used on payroll, operations, safety management, and other integral operations of an airport. It can't be used for land acquisition. We've got the grazing situation taken care of for the next 5 years, so we won't have to look at another fancy RFP on that, hopefully. And have the hay inside the wildlife area taken care of. There have been many ordinance revisions that we've been working on in the committees. D&Z has a list of their own. Historical has some updating to do with Chapter 32. And public safety has addressed the parking, the working of prisoners issues, and we'll be looking at those and wrapping those up by the 1st of May to get those out the door. Thank you all.
Okay, thank you. Just a quick update from the mayor's, on the mayor's report. We do have had almost weekly calls with the governor concerning coronavirus updates, and really appreciate her reaching out to the mayors throughout cities of South Dakota. As you know, we do have a pretty serious outbreak in Sioux Falls, Minnehaha, and Lincoln County. They expect that outbreak to peak within the next 3 weeks. The state has had an issue with receiving test kits, and that kind of will have a bearing on when we fully reopen. With Sioux Falls planning to peak in the next 3 weeks, the rest of the state is still scheduled by their models to peak in mid-June. And that peak, the numbers that are projected are 2,500 people hospitalized throughout the state. So it is a continuing serious thing that we need to continue to keep monitoring. I want to thank the community for the spot checks that we've done. The community has been in compliance, and I really appreciate the efforts of the community to keep vigilant. Again, I think it's important we don't get lax on social distancing, the hygiene habits of washing hands, and so forth. Governor Nome reminds us every time she speaks to us to keep doing that, because it does bend the curve. One of the things that just has been added this week is that sole proprietors now do qualify for unemployment. I'm sure that will help some of our businesses here in Hot Springs. And again, we're going through this together, but we're going to make it through, and really appreciate everyone's cooperation and continued cooperation. With that said, I would ask for a motion to go into executive session for personnel with the possibility of a action subsequent to the executive session.
Make a motion to go into executive session for personnel issues.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to go into executive session. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the executive session will start in approximately 5 minutes.
What time is that meeting tomorrow? 10? John? 9. Bob told me 10. You must not want me there.
You can go to this one at 9, no problem, you can take my place.
Oh, this ain't the one on the
Yeah, that's
food
at
truck?
10.
That's it, okay. That's what I'm talking. Well, that's what you was talking.
Where did
I'll
we
be
lose
there
our
too,
fearless
I got one to start.
motion maker?
He's not coming.
I told him to stay back, he's infected.
He is old, you know. He had more trips in there than all of us put together. I had to stop.
Okay, we do have quorum, and we're back in session at 23:40. 11:40 for
Us lay people.
civilians, yeah. We do have a motion to consider. I would ask if our council president would present the motion.
So correct me where I'm wrong. My understanding is that making a recommendation or a motion to accept the recommendations from admin finance regarding furloughing of employees during the until May 31st, and also employee travel, distance, length of time to quarantine once they leave the city, and if they leave the city or outside the 100 miles, and how long they're going to be furloughed for. That wasn't very concise, but that's the motion.
Okay, I believe it's a 100-mile distance and a 5 duty day furlough.
Yes.
Is there a second? And moved and seconded that we adopt those recommendations of the Admin Finance Committee, and also a 100-mile travel radius with a 5-day quarantine to those traveling outside of that.
But I also believe that we talked about needing to publicly read those recommendations. Is that correct?
I think what will happen is those that are furloughed will have to be approved by the council at a subsequent meeting as a personnel action, right?
We're going to do it effective tomorrow.
But doesn't that approval, we do post approvals later?
They're not being terminated or hired, so they're just being furloughed.
So that doesn't require council action?
We don't put it under personnel.
Okay,
This
okay.
is the
I
council
thought
action.
maybe that we would, if we did that. So then, if that is the case,
But
for
Garland
the
was
record,
saying, Garland, you have some?
I would just abbreviate, like go through, me personally, to be, make everything out in the open. Not go through the whole list like you did in executive session, but just abbreviate, 2 part-time people from finance, 2 part-time people from Evans Plunge. I would do it like that.
Okay, and identifying the number of people from each department that are being furloughed?
Correct.
Just furloughed?
Just furlough.
Okay.
And me.
Okay. So the recommendation is to furlough 3 part-time employees from the Evans Plunge. furlough 4 part-time employees from streets and maintenance. Make sure I get this right. Furlough 2 full-time positions and 1 part-time position from the library.
With the provision that may change as hours change at the library.
All right. And reduce the number of hours of part-time employees at the golf course and the clubhouse to focus on basic course maintenance at those 2 locations. Furlough 1 part-time employee from recreation. Furlough 1 part-time employee from the Mueller Center. And suspend having the city attorney attend council meetings unless there's a specific legal issue. And speak with the city attorney about the possibility of calling into the council meetings to answer questions at a reduced fee.
Okay, is there any?
That'll be so. Get your time date right.
Thank you. And to suspend hiring the CWT workers. Caitlin?
Question. You said furlough until May 31st, somebody said?
That's the duration of the current ordinance.
But like the mayor was saying that it might go through June.
Yeah.
So at the end of May, we decide whether or not we're going to extend it.
Extend the ordinance and I would imagine discuss.
Okay.
And that can be done by resolution, since we do have the ordinance. That can be done by resolution, so.
That'll be following the state guidelines.
Yeah.
And then to Dave's point, the recommendation is to begin furloughing affected employees on April 21st, 2020.
280 day less extended.
Yes, through May 31st, 2020, unless extended by ordinance and council.
Okay, is there a second to the extended motion?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And I'd ask for a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
Been moved and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting is adjourned.